Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to everyone around the world. It is Wednesday, my dudes, and today we have a very special guest with us. For those unfamiliar, I'm surprised because Shroom is one of the regulars in the Twitch music community. We got a Shroomhead One, German producer, regular good old synth boy, and just all around a swell guy. Hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone's having a wonderful day. We are in the middle of the week, so hopefully everyone is surviving. Everything is going well on my side of things. Looks like we actually have a fair bit of people in here already. So I think we can actually just kind of cycle right into things. How's everyone doing? I saw Theo, Cerberus, Music Fun, Medium Rare Bread. How's it going, buddy? Jazz, Feezy, Aplut. Lots of good people. A lot of people here. I appreciate everyone showing up. So let me just go ahead and get this set up so people know what's going on. Check this out. So let's just switch over to here. Boop. The interview is gone. How's it going, Archer? What's going on? So we can actually get rid of this. We can click this thing so that you can hopefully hear me now. And once Shroom gets his mic set up, everyone can see you. There we go. Howdy do. How you doing, Shroom?
Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm SH1. Hi. I'm the person this is about.
Oh, yeah. This will be fun. I'm excited. Because
Yes.
I feel like of all the people that I've interviewed, you are definitely one of the most...
I am one of them.
Well, yes, of all of the people who I've interviewed, you are in fact one of them. But what I was going to say is that, like, most of the people who I've interviewed so far don't have a lot of, like, technical background. Whereas you went to school for audio engineering, if I'm not mistaken.
I did. For 3 years.
So, yeah, with that, like, we have a, I guess what I can call a lexicon or a language that isn't necessarily something that I get to talk about with a lot of the other people who I've interviewed because they didn't go to school for it, which isn't to say that they're worse, but there's a language that you don't get that comes from going to school that I think is a bit interesting because it means we can talk about things a little bit more technically, though I do think we should try and stray away from maybe getting too deep into the jargon.
Okay. Yes. We will try and keep it like humanly understandable.
Exactly. So, I guess just to get started, why don't you introduce yourself to people who are a little bit unfamiliar? I think most people here know who you are, but why don't you just give us, like, the Shroomhead One origin story, and we can go from there.
Oof. So the origins. I guess so. My real name is not important. I'm SH1 or Shroomhead One. And I've been in contact with music from a very early age, I guess. I started playing the piano because my parents forced me to. At that time, I hated them for it, but now I love them for it. At like 5 years old, and then I kept going, kept getting lessons. And I guess sort of like when I was 15, I picked up the guitar as well. Did classical guitar for a couple of years. And then sort of when I was 17, I discovered that there was programs on the internet with which you could make internet songs, music. And that was very intriguing to me. And I tested a couple different ones, and I ended up with FL Studio, I guess. And I stuck with it for a while. Didn't really get anything done for a couple of years. And then sort of the tutorial landscape became to sort of, they came sort of like Seamless became a thing. there was War Beats, I guess. Do you remember War Beats?
I
War Beats was a
don't.
thing.
I actually don't
Um,
know that one. I know a couple of the OGs. You know, Sadowick and like you said,
Sadowick,
Seamless.
yes, yes, and all of that. Like when that started out, I already had like most of my basics down. So fuck it, I said, and sort of as I kind of let's say I went into well during all of this time I was like always like into different music, um and it started out like my first contact with electronic music really was like when I was 3 years old, I think. There's like a video of me dancing around in diapers to like a techno song.
Nice.
That's 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 the first contact I've had. But I've always been like fascinated with it, and at some point, then I figured out how one could make it with like the tools you have already at your disposal, and that was so fascinating to me. So before I even finished high school, you call it, I guess, I sort of went into the rabbit hole of making electronic music, and ever since that, I've been producing under the alias Shroomhead One. There's a few, if you really look, there's stuff from 2009, 2007, even that has my name on it, and yeah, there's, but you got to dig deep.
Well, where
It's pretty buried.
well where does Shroomhead One come from? Where'd you get the name?
So it it's basically what it says on the tin. I used to. Well, I'm I'm not against the use of consciousness enhancing substances,
I like the
and
diplomatic language there.
I used to experiment a lot with that when I was a teenager, and magic mushrooms kind of stuck with me because they do quite a lot to your consciousness. And for me, those were mostly beneficial experiences. Like I've not had like one what you would call bad trip
Mm.
ever. And I think that sort of has to do with my mentality of how I view things and what I let phase me and what I don't let phase me, I guess. Because I've always been like, hmm, I've been convinced that that is like to do with your state of mind before you consume such a substance. If you are in a bad mood, this is going to get amplified. You are going to have a bad day. Yes. So yeah, that's where the name's from. It was a very very big experiences I've had. One where hallucinations were mostly auditory.
Oh, interesting.
Um,
Okay.
so no big visuals, no six titted demon and stuff like that you might have seen in Fear and Loathing. But like mostly as if someone were putting just basic, like what I now call basic DSP effects, but on real life. And I was so fascinated by that experience that it just, yeah,
Well,
it
do you
just ended up defining me.
Oh, well, that's awesome, honestly. I mean, I'm with it. Like it's definitely, there's always an interesting story behind the name, even if the person who came up with it doesn't think it's as special.
Mm.
And I'm curious, like, how does that connect with your music? Like, would you say that the music you made before you started experimenting was different, or do you see kind of like a single connecting thread through all the music you've written?
I guess. So before I even like I didn't really make music or write music really before I had already started some of my experiments, but uh, I did improvise a lot on piano back then. Still do, but um, that was sort of where I got into it. It was like right before I smoked my first joint, I guess. It was like yeah, a thing where I'd sort of take chord progressions that I've already learned, like in my piano lessons, and sort of try and sort of fit them together in different in different ways. And I guess one or two song ideas I might have had back in those days, but it wasn't really like a whole concept of this is going to be uh, intro, verse, chorus, stuff like that. And like no ideas of arrangement yet. Just just seeing what works tonally, and with like my ongoing music theory education and stuff like that, I was just sort of using that as a crutch as well to sort of get that internalized more. And I feel it helped me in my musical development. But then when I did do when I did smoke my first joint, when I did do shrooms for the first time, I suddenly found myself like with other musicians, like doing stuff in bands and stuff like that, before I even like had a door open for more than an hour at a time. So that's where I'm from. So I come from a band context, and then sort of those concepts translated into electronic music, and we did a lot of basically musical wank, is what I call it now. We we sat around and did 20 minutes of just jamming, and just we kept the ideas that were let's say not not too far off of the ground, but we still had like a psychedelic sound back in the day, I guess.
I mean, that's like that's kind of fun because now that you're in like a very solo context for a lot of the music that you're putting out, like I don't hear a very psychedelic quality to it, but I can hear like the band concept. Like it feels like all of the instruments are kind of different performers rather than one musical idea, which comes out in a lot of other artists' work that I've found, which isn't necessarily to say like one is particularly good or bad, but like one of the questions I have is like the music and the influences you had growing up and how that related to your music, and kind of hearing you talk about like where you came from, almost like a jam band kind of upbringing, that your music feels like a very carefully constructed jam session. Not in the sense that like it's not connected, but the ideas feel like they were improvised out and then arranged into a very cohesive musical sense or musical
Because
story,
that's
I
what's
guess.
happened.
Yeah, no, of course.
Because you've seen right through me. That's exactly the way I sort of make music nowadays. It's sort of I sit down and I play something. That's like important to me, like to be able to at least like play the basic chord progression myself rather than like clicking it in with MIDI. I don't know. It's just a psychological thing. I could probably achieve the same result by clicking it in, but it feels different. Like it connects to me more, and that is what I use. Like this energy I sort of use to grow attached enough to a tune to finish it. You know.
Oh yeah. I mean, well, with that, like, what are you working on right now? We don't have to talk too much about like what's going on deep down the road, but what is like coming up for Shroom in the next, say, 2 months or so?
Oof. In the next 2 months, well, one thing that I've been spending a lot of time on is actually not music. So it's sounds. I've been working with ImageLine to there's this new plugin that got coming out. It's called Flex, and they've asked me to do a library basically for it, and that's something that I've like that's coming up like in the near future. Long term, I have music, like I'm sitting on a bunch of tunes. I've sort of sort of made a lot of tunes to sort of right before the finish line. And what I do usually is I will sort of I will make the tune until it's 80% done. Then I'll let it sit for a while and lose that emotional connection. So I can make rational decisions about it, you know. And that's where a lot of my music that I'm sitting on right now is. And then for the future, I guess like I've got like 3, 4, 6 tunes that will come out like as one thing, as one EP or in betweeny thing. But I have yet to sort of make a plan for it. Like I'm at that stage in my life where I started making release plans, and if they work or not, I don't know. But I've made release plans in the past, and I'm going to make a plan for it before I sort of announce a big thing.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. I mean, I gotta actually pause for 1 second because thank you to Bianca Bia and Kagan for those raids. Thank you so much, Bianca with the party of 36, Kagan with the party of 9. Thank you both so much. I really appreciate it. Welcome everyone. Hello, if
Thanks,
you're
guys.
new here. Yes, I am Musar.
Yes.
I do music education, music production, music theory streams. Next to my head, you see Shroomhead One, who is another music streamer. Right now, we're doing a little artist interview thing that I've been hosting on my Twitch, going over his background, going over his music, talking about his process. But yeah, thank you all so much for stopping by. I appreciate it. Thank you, Bianca, for that follow. I'm doing good. How you doing? How was your stream? I'm not familiar, but I'm definitely gonna have to check you out now. But yeah, thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. I honestly, sorry, got a little distracted there, stream. But like,
I know how Twitch is.
oh yeah. The interesting thing for me is that like, when we were talking in the pre-stream, I kind of found out that if you look up Shroomhead One on SoundCloud, there is the SH1 channel or the SH1 page, but there's also a bunch of tracks on the Image Line page from Shroomhead One, going back like almost like 6 years.
Yeah, so that's another thing about me. Like I've been sort of in cohorts with Image Line from relatively early on. There was this one song contest that they've made where I guess I came in second or something, and they were sending me, like, they were working on a new plugin at the time, and they sent me the plugin before everyone else had it. And I was like, what am I supposed to do with it? And I don't know, just make something, make a song or something like that. And I made like a little bit of a loop with it, and as soon as that hit like the forum, they were like, "All right, you got to sign this. You got to sign this. You got to sign this, please. You know, we want your demos, please. We want demos for our plugins from you." And then they sort of added me to the alpha team, which is the thing. They have alpha testers for like everything they put out, and yeah, I've been on that and making content for Image Line for about 6 years now. So that's a thing that I do. I mean, the Flex thing is like just an extension of that. That's like making it official, I guess.
Yeah, which is really exciting. I mean, it for me, I think that's cool because, you know, one of the ways that you and I feel like even met was through Kilohearts. Because we're both on the beta testing team for Kilohearts, and it's interesting how many opportunities there are for producers outside of just releasing tracks. And I think people can almost get stuck in this mindset of I need to make sure my whole brand and career is based around the music that I'm writing. But there's also like making sample packs, there's beta testing products, there is doing sponsored content, you know, there's educational stuff, like there's sync music for like TV shows and stuff like that. There's mixing and mastering, like just traditional engineering, which I know you do. Don't you work at a record studio?
Well, in like in connection with the diploma I've done for the last couple years. I've also been like out of that place, doing mixing, mastering, and recording, and it's been like it's been a really good financial help, I guess, and it's also like it's taught me so much that I wouldn't have been able to figure out by just going to uni or by just sitting here and making tracks. So yeah, I feel like that is an experience that is quite unique to my situation. Um, what is that? What was that other thing? Oh yeah, if you like free shit, guys, if you like free shit, get yourself a beta testing gig.
Oh yeah.
I swear.
Like helping plugin manufacturers make their shit
Yeah.
is honestly, it's a bit of a self-serving goal, because a lot of times they know what the fuck they're doing. There's just like little tiny kinks in the armor that you
Yeah.
need to deal with, and most of the time you just get really good products for free. But
Yes.
obviously
That-
you gotta be good at what you're doing.
You got to be good at what you're doing, but also you got to know the right people. That's another thing. Like keep connected. Don't just. I guess this is a basic advice. Don't do what I do and be like isolated. But yeah, just keep a keep up like connections with industry people. You know, developers. Like just don't shut them out of your process. Like I've got people like from ImageLine, for example, coming into my stream, looking at what I do, and then when I have a crash, they'll have fixed it the next day sometimes. So
Oh yeah, I mean, it's definitely like. I mean, I think the thing that I have found about, making contacts not just with software developers, but with other artists, with managers and people just connected with like the broader music industry, which is not just like the music industry as like record labels, A&Rs, all that stuff, but like the whole software scene, promotion, event hosts. Like there's such a huge world out there that you can get kind of stuck in your head, just kind of working in the DAW. But it's almost as much a factor of what you're doing in your day-to-day life as far as what you're or as opposed to what you're doing in the studio. Do you think that's like almost like a bigger part, or what do you think?
it's sort of for the last three years, it's been sort of 50-50 ish. Now going forward with this, like for me, it's probably going to be more of the sound design things that I'm going to do, because it's reliable money. It's very important. And yeah, I don't know. Like it's a good way to sort of finance yourself if you're a freelance person. Obviously, long-term employment wouldn't be bad as well, but that's hard to find in our industry.
Absolutely.
Something long-term.
Yeah, I mean, pretty
I
much.
feel like you always got to do like if you're like me and you make, let's say, weird music. There's not really like there isn't really a way that you can like live off of that without like making big changes to your life, like moving around a lot. And I can't do that right now. Like I can't be on the road all the time. I have like I have a family. Like my peeps are getting old, and I kind of got to be in the country a bit, you know. So yeah, I gotta be on call for when something happens. I gotta be able to sort of get in the car and go there and stuff like that. So for me, it's not an option to go touring around the world, play a lot of shows, um, and that's really where the money is for us. Like I've never seen like someone among like my circle of acquaintances, I guess, being able to just live off of Spotify.
Yeah.
It's not gonna happen. So you gotta do touring. You gotta do other things to sort of get other revenue streams than just putting out music.
Yeah,
No,
diversifying your income is really essential when it comes to making a living off of your tunes, so to speak.
indeed,
It's
indeed.
it's kind of funny. There was a conversation in Mr. Bill's Discord the other night where people were talking about like what essentially what would happen if you could no longer make money off of your music, off of writing your music and releasing it and touring. And like Bill was saying, I can do film scores, I can do sample packs, I can do mixing and mastering, I can do ghost production.
Yeah.
I can do teaching. So there's all of these different kind of aspects of it. I think he also talked about like being an agent or being a manager. Like there's tons of ways for you to make a
Yeah.
living, as long as you are, I guess, not getting too stubborn or bullheaded about like I need to be the artist, so to speak.
Yes.
Um,
Yes, that is like that. That is like a bit of like as a rose tinted glasses kind of thing. When you start out, that's like your dream. Usually, I don't know. It certainly was for me when I started out. But as I grew older, it quickly sort of when my sort of impression of the music scene and the music business got a bit more defined. um, I, I quickly learned that wouldn't be an option for like 99.9999999% of people, of which I am one, probably.
Yeah, which is honestly a bit of a reassuring feeling. Like, instead of worrying, like, am I going to make it? Just look for other ways to make it that don't involve having your face up on a billboard in front of fucking some club
Yeah,
in Vegas or whatever.
indeed.
But why don't we start shifting focus a little bit and start
Okay.
going into basically the Shroomhead process. So
Okay.
what we're gonna
Yes.
do is we're going to listen to two Shrooms tracks, and I think. Do you want to listen along with the stream, or do you want me to count you off and we can listen to it on our own? And then if there's any point that you want to stop and talk about, well, hey, I thought this was really cool and I want to point that out. Which would you prefer?
I guess. Yeah. I'll unmute the stream, or no. Hold on. I'll just play along with it with you,
Alright.
because I think time syncing that is easier because the stream is on a bit of a delay for me. Um, we shall just yeah. I've got it queued up.
Okay. Alrighty. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play this in 3, 2, 1.
Yeah. So this is the first thing that I would mention. This
Alright.
is in Phrygian Dominant, and I feel like that's always a good thing to sort of start something off. This is why I chose this to be like the first tune of the record. Um, Indeed.
Yeah, sorry, I just
Phrygian Dominant has like a sort of a mystery to it that sort of leaves you wanting to reveal what's going to happen. And in this tune, I'm sort of combining that with something else that's going to happen like really really soon.
oh yeah.
um, and yeah, I feel like that's why I started it this way.
Yeah, I mean,
But yeah,
well, just
let's keep on.
yeah, well, just so that people who are not as versed in music theory understand, when we're talking about like Phrygian dominant, if you're like if you're looking at like a normal minor scale, and you take the second scale degree, lower it by one, and then you raise the third up one, you get this kind of weird leapy sensation.
Yeah,
And it feels kind of Middle Eastern, feels very Mediterranean, I call it, because it's also found in, I think, the flamenco scale. Uses this same kind of minor second followed by what's called an augmented second. And it's just it's
for jazz people, a sharp 9.
a sharp 9. Yes, exactly. So it's a fun alternative to the major minor scale. Do you use it throughout the whole track, or is it just something you're using in the intro?
So yeah, it's basically present for the whole track, and there's like this contrast between that and the Aeolian fake out, where it goes to major instead of minor. The victory theme that you've been talking about for I guess it was like 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah,
it?
yeah. We're talking about
exactly that.
the Mario cadence.
Is like the second half of my phrase, basically, and that's like the theme that the whole song has, where it's like mystery, but confidence.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's super fun. No, I get it. Like it's like the whole. I mean, it ties in with the name of the track. It's a liftoff.
Yes.
But let's keep going. I'm at 25 seconds.
All right.
So I'm gonna start it in 3, 2, 1. Yeah, I'm pausing right
This is probably
there.
This is probably a good point. So this is the we've heard like the, I hate to call it a leitmotif because Wagner was like a cunt.
True.
But, it's like it's like that. It's a leitmotif, I guess. It's sort of little line that comes in the B part of the drop, I guess, the chorus. I feel like that is what it's all been sort of building up to. And I try and sort of variate that throughout the track, which is like something that I've like been avoiding doing for the longest time, but I feel like this is like where I've really sort of got it, for the first time. Um, like why people even do this inside of like a musical format that's so small, like a song.
Yeah,
You know,
having that like repeating idea at like little glimpses here and there before kind of revealing it in full. It like I found it creates a really nice sense of cohesion in the track without it feeling like it's loop based. Because one thing I've noticed about your music is it never feels loop based. It doesn't feel like you work in 2 or 4 bar chunks. You kind of have the whole phrase kind of, if not in your head, in your process. And I think being able to focus on the musical structure as kind of segmented ideas, kind of a leitmotif or a reoccurring theme, which usually when we talk about leitmotifs, we're talking about like stuff that refers to a character or a participant in the play or the opera or whatever. And I really do notice that a lot in your work is kind of this attention paid to almost like, and I use this analogy a lot, like creating a story in the music. Also, thank you to Sachi Music and Loveless TV for those follows. Thank you both so much. I actually had a question about the drum programming.
Okay.
Was that like studio drummer, or was that live, or was that all programmed in?
That was Addictive Drums, and it
Oh.
was not 100% clicked in. I did play the drum beat on my MIDI keyboard.
Nice.
That's basically like clicking it in. Like I obviously I've had drum lessons as well, right? I've sort of tried all the instruments, and I would like to be able to play something like this. I'm just not good enough. And I don't have a drum set.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to fit one in your bedroom studio, I've found.
Yeah.
Cool. Like, so I guess the other thing I wanted to talk about, I'm going to jump back to about 115.
Okay.
So, it sounds like you're shifting a lot of the instrumentation, like right when you hit into the drop, because like the drums become way more digital sounding. The chords grow quite a bit in kind of like their energy level. So you could either talk about the orchestration, you could talk about the sound design, but I'm curious kind of what your process was kind of working out this chorus or drop or whatever you want to call it.
So I thought to myself, well, first of all, it's basically the same idea that it was before. My music is actually loop based. It's just I try and sort of figure out a way to make it sound not loop based, and one way I do it is by changing up like everything, like all the instruments, using like sort of inversions of chords that like that chord progressions that we have heard before, different voice leadings and stuff like that. But essentially, it's the same chord progression, but with much bigger sounding patches, and especially like the bass patch is like something I spent quite a while on for this because it needed to fit right there. I feel like this is something that I spend like most of my technical time on, is mostly like sound designing things, like picking a preset. Often I start from an existing preset, picking a preset and sort of tweaking it to where I need to go, or making something from scratch. I think this is all made from scratch. Just to be able also, like I think like because I've had the audio engineer education, I think how can I get this, what I have, like my song up to this point. How can I get it to -6.5 RMS or LUFS? You know, how can I blow this up to a point where it like shakes walls but isn't too aggressive, isn't too distorted.
Yeah. Oh no, the mix down here is like ungodly clean. Like it's just nothing is interfering with anything in this mix down. Do you do a lot of pan pot mixing, or do you prefer stereo imaging when you're trying to get your stereo field kind of situated?
I try and leave the pan potentiometer alone for electronic music. I try and use stereo widening techniques mostly, like because this is vintage. Like this has got like this whole album has like a vintage feel to it, right? So
Yeah.
I try and use things that they had in the 80s, like a chorus and stuff like that, a doubler, just things that that would have been around in the 80s, or shitty converters. Fucking like kilohertz bit crush is a good thing
Oh
if
yeah.
you know how to use it. Like if you don't if you don't like really emphasize the peaks it makes, it can be beautiful. Like it can sound really nice tucked into something.
Oh yeah. Like it's just. I mean, I'm curious. Let's see, what was it? Where'd you make that, or where'd you get that the top line synth? That's what I was kind of listening to right now.
That is a plugin called oh god, what is it called? Something bass or other by Focusrite. Actually, I got it with my with one of my Focusrite interfaces.
Oh, interesting.
I think Novation Base Station. Right, it's a real synth.
Oh yes, I've heard of the base station.
It's a real synth, but they make a plugin version of it and give you it for free when you buy the interfaces. And I use that, and it was a preset from that where I just basically tweaked the filter a couple of hertz, I guess, and then that was the sound. And then I added like guitar distortion on top. Just I tend to degrade my sounds quite a lot to make them fit more into my and then also like you get a different sort of you get a different frequency response that you can then shape because there's more in the sound that there was previously. So that's what I did here.
Well, I mean, touching on that real quickly, I remember hearing you mention in one of your streams, I think it was either yesterday or last week, where you said that you don't compress as much as you clip or distort.
Yes.
Is there a specific reasoning for that? Like because this is electronic music and not more acoustic stuff, or is that like a taste
that
thing?
Too, yes, that too.
Okay.
Like that certainly plays into it. But the biggest reason that I clip instead of compress on drums, for example, is because it sounds better, in my opinion. it just doesn't sound as fucked with if you just shave off like 4 dB of a kick drum's transient rather than like try and make it do this with compression, because a compressor will always just sort of change the microdynamics of a sound, and a clipper will not do that. A clipper will just like tell the waveform to stop being a waveform at some point, and then yes,
well,
that's what's happening.
Do you have any particular clippers you use? Because I know you use a fair bit of like stock stuff. You use a fair bit of kilohertz stuff. Like, do you have a preferred clipping plugin or like a couple that you reach for more than others?
The one that I find the most convenient is still G-Clip. It's a free clipping plugin. Just Google. It's on it's on KVR. You can get it for Windows, I think.
Yeah.
There's no Mac version. I'm sorry. If you have Reason, you're not fucked, because you can get the Reason version for like $2 or something, and it works on Mac.
Oh, interesting.
But it doesn't. Sadly, there's no Mac VST version. But this is like it's a really convenient plugin. It's just the threshold and a soft clip, basically a knee for the clipping.
Hmm.
So you can turn it into a soft clipper, but just by design, it's a hard clipper, just hard cutting off past a certain point, and yeah, that's really the most convenient one. But then I also use like K clip, like
Yeah,
Hasrog.
I love K clip.
Yeah, it's got like a bit more spice to it. You can sort of tell it like it has a few different algorithms. You can be more selective if you want to be more picky. But most of the time, I use it like as a dynamics tool, like just as a tool. It's
Okay.
it's not really designed to have like a certain sound to it. It's just supposed to sound nicer than compression, and that it does, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, I use K-Clip all the time. I mean, it's a pretty affordable plugin when you can find it on sale. And
I
it's
paid, I think, $20 for K-Clip.
yeah.
I got it on sale, and then K-Clip 3, like the multi-band version of K-Clip, that because I had the other one was also like $20, so
Yeah.
it's really affordable.
Oh yeah, same here. I got it on sale, and then I upgraded to the new one when it came out, and it's just they're not on sale. Oh, interesting. The price for K-Clip dropped to 40. Interesting. So Whittler is saying that now K-Clip is much more affordable, which is good. I mean, I think like I'm not a big proponent of needing to go to third-party plugins because I feel like you generally can do everything you need to do with first-party plugins, with kind of
Yes.
just the stock stuff. But
Absolutely.
like I don't know, there is something to be said for kind of interacting with a new interface or a different GUI design to
Yes.
spark some creativity. Like, are there any plugins that you find yourself kind of like reaching for when you want to get out of that kind of like I'm kind of stuck in a rut. I don't really have anything I want to do, and we can talk about this more a little bit later. But I'm
So
just curious.
you mean like creative plugins like
Yeah.
that just do a bunch of shit that you wouldn't think about like as an engineer.
Yeah,
Yes.
a do cool things button, basically.
Yes, I have a few do cool things VSTs. Yes, for example, I quite enjoy Glitch 2 by ill formed, I think, is
Yeah.
the company.
Yeah.
And that is a basic fuck shit up plugin. It's got like 8 effects, and it's you turn it on, it fucks shit up. That's what it's for, and it fucks shit up rhythmically. And if you just hit randomize a couple times, there's interesting results guaranteed, 100% of the time. Another, I guess that's a bunch of plugins. The Cable Guys Shaperbox thing. I use that to be like a do cool stuff button.
Do you have the
Basically, like-
whole Shaperbox
Yes,
package?
I have the
Oh,
bundle.
which one do you use most?
I think the one I use most is the volume shaper for engineering reasons, but
Yeah.
the one I use most to like make cool sounds happen is the time shaper. It's basically grow speed but multi-band. I don't know if you know grow speed. It's an image line native plugin.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's single band, and this one's multi-band, so you can sort of do a different kind of fucking shit up for the high band than you can for the low band.
Yeah, I
And that
haven't.
yields interesting results.
Yeah, I haven't picked up the rest of the Cable Guys things. Like I have like a volume shaper and I have halftime, which they
Yeah,
put out for
halftime is
free.
basically time shaper.
Okay.
Yeah, it's basically a separate version of time shaper. It's like that, and it's really interesting. And what I do with that is just I flick through presets or randomize it because it lets you randomize, and then yeah, I end up with cool things that happen to sounds that I don't know what to do with. But most of the time, like when I don't know what to do with the song, I just put it on ice for a couple of hours and then come back and then I sort of have newfound courage to sort of try and jam in something that if the song is actually missing something, maybe like after that time I realize there's nothing actually missing. Like I can just leave this as is, and it'll be good.
Oh yeah,
Sometimes.
yeah. I dig that. Well, let's keep going with the track. I'm gonna jump back to about 145.
Yes.
All right, so we're gonna be starting in 3, 2, 1, go. Also, thank you, Recording Monster Studio, for that follow.
Good spot. So this whole section is basically like to wind down what's happened before, but it's also sort of strictly this is the only thing that's like strictly Phrygian dominant in the track. So it's sort of resting on something, and then like the next sort of musical idea, chord progression wise, comes in. That is like entirely different to everything we've heard so far, you know. Mm-hmm. So it took me a while to come up with this and to sort of make it work the way it does, because it was all sort of like this was like the only thing that was entirely new, and then everything else sort of based off what I've already had, and then I'd made the part after this before I've made this, so this is like a patch inside of the track.
So would you call this a bridge?
Yes, I would say this is definitely bridge material right here.
I'm with it.
Yeah, and I guess the sound design here is also interesting because this is all FL stock sounds.
Oh, no way.
Like this whole section is 100% stock sounds. Like, and well, not the synth in the middle. Like that's no, that's also a stock synth. That's like DX10. I don't know if you've seen that one. That's like the most basic bitch FM oscillator synth that you couldn't get. Is like 2 operators. You make them FM. That's it.
Oh, geez. So it's like more limited than operator. It's basically like 3OSC, but you can FM it.
Yes, indeed. That is what it is.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Now, I noticed right here, right around where we paused, like there's a little bit of, it's not quite high passing, but I'm noticing some interesting shifting in the frequencies. Like it sounds like it was intended to kind of announce a section change. What's going on right there at the end?
So let me quickly play this again.
Yeah, we're gonna jump back. I'm gonna jump back to about 2:30 or so.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing I used to do a lot back in the early days of production, and that I've recently started doing again because it's just good practice. If you are intending to sort of change up a section and sort of have like a completely different chord progression, I tend to high pass out the bass. Like I tend to make the bass go away, because that is like the fundamental that your mind thinks is like the basis of the track. When that goes away, you know, something's about to change.
Yeah.
And there's like no big rises or anything, because I find like we rely as producers, most of us rely a lot on dedicated transitional sounds. I don't do that as much anymore.
Okay.
because I feel like you can sort of compose and sort of arrange your mix in a way that will still happen to some extent, you know?
Oh yeah. Well, it's like one thing that I've talked about quite a bit is like obviously, whenever I'm doing feedback and someone has like a very dull and kind of lifeless track, I talk about, the motion. I talk about making sure you have, your ups and downs, your ins and outs, making sure that each section kind of flows. And, the easiest way to show that is by showing people, risers and downlifters and all these big fucking
Yeah.
noises all over the place. But
Bells and whistles.
exactly. But it's honestly more rewarding at times to look at how you can do that with the sounds that are already there. Like maybe you have this repeated musical phrase that you shorten down to just one note, and then you start pitching up that note over time. Maybe you have like a reverb on a send that you're cranking up the send value on for a bunch of sounds, high passing the whole section.
Yeah. The reverb automation is very important. Like automation overall, like this is automated to fuck. Like everything basically on that. If even that tiny FM synth has like 7 parameters that you can automate. I've automated all of them. It's it's just a thing that you do to sort of progress. It's basically free progression, is what I call it.
Oh yeah, well, and it keeps the loop from sounding like a loop, which goes towards kind of the direction of, at the very least, your music, if not honestly most people's music, is trying to break out of something that feels like 2 bars looping over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So it's a really good demonstration of like,
I
because
recently
this.
saw that, like
Yep.
Haywire, for example. If you've ever seen like him produce, he has like the reverb automation built into the patch. Like he jams stuff, and then the reverb comes up while he's jamming, and I'm like, I would go crazy if that happened. But he's just used to it because all of his patches have it. It's so nice.
Oh, so
I don't know.
like so like if I'm understanding, like you're saying that Haywire like will play something, and then when his hands move off of the keys for a moment, you have this big swell of reverb.
Or sometimes it's just time synced. He'll just keep playing, and it's and then at the end of like an 8-bar phrase, the reverb will come up. Just to announce a change.
Oh, that's clever.
That he's thought of before actually playing anything while making the patch. So that's like pretty interesting to me.
Oh yeah, I mean it also, I feel like that would dictate your decision making later on. Like
Yes.
the type of melodies and the type of chord progressions, the type of sounds you would use. If you know for a fact that like in the last 2 bars of this drop, I'm going to have a high pass on the master, and I'm going to send all of my drums to a reverb. It's completely going to change the way that I write that part of the song.
Indeed.
So it's little things like that. Because like this, like for your track, like this little transition right here, it's what, 3 seconds tops that it takes place, but there's
Maybe,
a lot of
yeah.
stuff going on underneath
There's
that.
a lot of things happening. But no dedicated transitional sounds. Just using what I have had, and yeah, just trying to make that into the transitional sound, I guess.
Yeah.
Via reverb automation, via filter automation. Basically, yeah, I'm riserifying my sounds in that particular moment.
Yeah,
And,
without having to
I
go
guess-
vengeance on everyone. All right, so let's keep going. I'm gonna start at 232 in
Indeed.
3, 2, 1. pause it at 320 because I need to ask you about this new. It's not quite a chord synth, but it sounds almost like some Deadmau5 plucks in the background. What is that?
I spent so long on that synth. Oh
what
my
is
God.
that? That's so cool.
I'm quite proud of it, actually. Like, because like it's basically a version of the synth we heard in like the build up, but it's got like a bit of a filter envelope on it. It's got that Deadmau5 pluck thing going on top of it, and it's like I honestly I put it in there and I was certain it wasn't going to work, and then I heard it and I was like, okay, that's it. That's the song. That's how it's going to go.
Yeah.
It took me quite a while to make that like have this impact, you know. Because it fits so nicely with the drum groove that I've got going, just because of the timing of the filters and stuff. Like it took quite a while to get that right. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like, for me, like it sits also really perfectly in the frequency range, because there's just like there's this little tiny hole. Like it sounds like it's like somewhere between like 300 and 500 hertz where it's resting at, and it just kind of punches through, and it just kind of opens up the whole track, which is really nice. It also like, I'm just listening back real quick. Yeah, like the way that those filter sweeps hit, like between the kick and the snare, it just like it creates almost like not quite back phrasing, but it feels like there's like an additional level of shuffle in the track, which is just, it's really fun. Was that intentional, or
I guess I split that up into so sort of the also what I changed, I guess, from the part before it, is I have like these chords are 2 notes only, right? That's one thing. Like I did to clean it up, to make it be able to be in that frequency range. It could only be 2 notes. So I chose the 2 defining notes from my big chords with accidentals earlier, and use those. So that is probably a reason why it works the way it does.
Yeah. Well, and also just to kind of touch on like this lead synth, like it's very much like a Haywire, Barely Alive kind of synth wavy lead. I love all like the vibrato and the pitch bends. Like, did you play the automation in when you were playing the MIDI in your keyboard, or were you doing those as like 2 separate kind of processes?
I think for that particular one, I did not do the pitch bending in the same recording. I played something in, and then I thought about what would I like to have pitch bend on it, and just overdubbed on that.
So, you overdubbed manually. You didn't draw it in, or did you draw it in?
No, I overdubbed with like my finger on the MIDI controller and just moving the mod wheel and shit.
That's fun. Yeah, it makes it feel super live. Like I could see this, kind of going back to like the band thing. Like I could see this being played out at a show.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you have a drummer with a couple like electronic drum kit sounds, you have like some keyboardists, you have like a guitar player. All you need to do is get some vocals on this, and you have a whole pop track essentially.
Yeah. I guess that's another thing. Like my music, I think most of it is laid out in a way that someone could actually perform it, you know, and that's like one of the big things that I like I'm working towards. I want to be a bit like Haywire, you know. I want to be able to sort of perform this stuff, or at least a portion of it, like in front of an audience, and just have it sound like it does on the record.
Yeah, you want to get involved in the performance of the performance, so to speak.
Yes.
With that, all right, so let's jump forwards a little bit to about 3 minutes 15 seconds. All right, so I'm starting in 3, 2, and 1. Okay.
Oof.
There you go.
Yeah. So the big thing about like the last bit of the song was for me like will the lead that I've made, like the leitmotif, will that fit on the new chord progression? And it did. So I got lucky. And didn't really have like I didn't have to change anything about it. So that was like a shot in the dark for me, but it worked.
Oh, yeah.
And then the second bit is like the lead line from the breakdown that I've played with the FM synth, but with a like a more toned down lead sound, and that fit over the new chord progression as well. So I got double lucky.
Hey,
And,
it's the capstone.
I was able. Yeah, I was like really glad to be able to sort of continue this motif idea throughout the track, like to the very end, basically, and not have it sound like shit.
Oh yeah, no,
That
it
was
works
the first
great
for me.
Well, I mean, I like the progression of the track in that way. It definitely, like, if I skim through it, like, I can tell which section I'm in. It's very clearly defined where we're at in the song, not just like in terms of the structure of it, but in terms of the tone, in terms of the timbre, even in terms of like the frequency spectrum, like the outro, like the last like 20-30 seconds or so. A lot of those sounds, like you were saying, like we heard before, like that big delayed doof 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 snare, and a lot of these lead sounds, but they're all more restrained, and they're all kind of dying down, and it just kind of fits the transitions really smoothly. And I should mention for people in chat that this is actually part of a larger project. Like the EP has how many tracks in it? 10? Yeah, it's basically an album, my guy.
It's basically an album.
Basically an album, or a double EP, so to speak.
Yeah.
So were you thinking about the track that this was leading into when you wrote this, or were you just kind of treating the track on its own when you came up with this outro?
I was thinking about it, but I still didn't know which track would go there, like would go in number 2. But I guess I chose track number 2 based on the way Liftoff ends. You know,
oh, for sure.
That's how I did. Like I tend to make music first, then curate and sort of arrange, and then maybe go back into the arrangement and change stuff so it sort of gels together better as a continuous experience, audio experience, I guess.
For sure.
In this case, like not while writing the song, because I'm just not that big brained. I'm sorry.
You can't. It's hard to see the forest for the trees sometimes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think that's actually a good way to start to transition into the next song that we're going to listen to. Because now that
is far less big brained than what we just listened to.
Exactly. Well, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, I think it'll be interesting to compare something that is, finished, something that is kind of fitting into a broader concept project. And move towards kind of like the in progress phase, because Shroom has another track that we're going to be listening to in just a second, one that as of now sounds like it's kind of standalone. It's not really something that has a particular home, if I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah.
And I think this will be a good way to start talking about kind of what the Shroomhead process is from start to finish. So I guess what we can do is, instead of talking about things while we are listening to the track, let's just play through the tune. If you see anything in chat that you want to respond to, you can go ahead and either say it or type it up in chat. And then as soon as we're done, we're going to switch over to a full screen so that Shroom can actually take us through the project file, and we can kind of talk through like his process start to finish. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So whenever you're ready, I'm just going to get the track going.
Okay. I'll just go switch to DAW and play it in the DAW.
Alrighty. All right. So I'm going to get started in 3, 2, 1. was lit. That was pretty
So
fun.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it's definitely a huge change up from the first track we listened to.
indeed.
Shows a big diversity of
I
skill.
I do like a lot of different music, and this is one thing that I like a lot is like just aggressive bass music. I make aggressive bass music too. Like if you look at my SoundCloud, you might not think that, but I do make aggressive bass music too, and I make a lot of it, and I'm sitting on quite a bunch of it, and it's just gonna have to wait until there's like a release of that. I don't know.
Oh yeah,
It just needs to be right,
the Yoi
you know.
EP.
The Yoi EP, indeed.
Yeah. Well, do you want to hop over to the screen share so we can start taking a look at this
Yes.
project?
Sure. Let me also send you guys the audio from there, so you can, or I guess you'll hear Musar double if I do that. So
I think it'll be okay.
it'll be okay. Okay. So
A little echo
screen
never hurt
shares
anyone.
here. This one is the right one. Yes.
Oh,
You can see my screen.
there we go. They
There
can
we
all
go.
see you. They can't see us, but at least there's a DAW in front of everyone.
There's a door. There's the project, and the sound should be this thing. If I is let me is that too loud for you?
You could probably
Is that-
turn it down a couple decibels, like 2 or 3.
Okay, let me go -6 here. Okay. So yeah, this is the song. Um, you'll notice this is labeled 808. That's because it's an 808. It doesn't sound like one, but it is. The Harmer 808, and I did shenanigans to it. I guess I'll just explain some of the intricacies, I guess, about this song. I don't know, just to give you guys an insight into what I do to make things sound the way they do. This is hilariously complicated. I could have done this with like 2 plugins, but this is like EQ, EQ, just static EQ here and there, bit of a filter motion and harmor. That's like doing the sweeping. Where is that actually coming from? I have no idea. Oh my god. Ah yes. Now I know. This thing that's automated. So this ladder filter is doing the thing. So yeah, that's the main bit of the sound, and this is just to color it. Like all of this stuff is just for sound coloring, basically, and this is the thing that's making the sound the way it does. But yeah, as we go forward with this, like my process is like this. Like I make things really really complicated that could be so easy. When it opens up to the break, there's like a bunch of patches. There's more harmor. This is basically all the tonal sounds in this are harmor patches, I think. Oh, that's an automation. This one's a bit more intricate, I guess, but it's also a harmor at the start. Bit of this, bit of that, bit of distortion, bit of reverb. What's going on in the snap heap? Ah, yes, octave reverb, bit of modulation. Nothing too fancy, I guess, but it makes this sound. And this is like also very complicated. This is like a physical modeling synth, Sakura. It makes string sounds. It's like if you have Ableton, I guess Tension would be the one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it would be Tension for you guys. And just like a long chain. Like a lot of my stuff is like serial chains of stuff that don't work in parallel all too often. unless it's like from the get go when I use phase plants, which we'll get into shortly, I guess. This bass is I don't know what this bass is. There's a couple basses. So this is a Harmer with like just a bunch of automation on it, I guess. Um, these are this is Harmer and Citrus in parallel. See, I do parallel stuff. But like it's nothing spectacular going on in those patches. It's just the distortion, the processing is mostly why it sounds the way that it does. Like distortion, like this is a shape that I use a lot.
What does
Because it
that
makes
do?
like this fuzzy thing happen to sine waves. Like if you run a sine wave through this, let me actually show you guys what that sounds like. So sine wave, like so, sine wave, and let's get something that's free here, and let's just grab this one. This is in this one, yeah. Let's grab this one and put it on there. Where did I put it? There we go. Let's just grab it and run it through there.
Oh, there we go.
That's what it sounds like. No, that wasn't the sine wave. So this is like based on the velocity, based on the input volume you put into it. That's like the harmonic profile that this makes, and this is like perfect for bass house because it sounds messy, but only like in the higher frequencies. I don't know, because you're basically making a kink in the waveform.
Oh, so it's just introducing harmonics, like in a very specific part of the frequency spectrum, essentially.
Yeah, it's like right when the crossover is no, well, it's not crossover distortion. It's sort of after the crossover is done. Basically, it's like when it sweeps up, that's where it catches it and sort of folds it back down for one fold only, and then back up. So yeah, that's why these sounds are jagged. I guess. Jagged is the best way to describe what this sounds like to me.
Well, I'm curious.
Am I too fast for you guys? Like I'm reading chat and like am I just brushing over this too fast for you?
A little, maybe a little bit. I do have a couple
slow
questions.
down a bit if you want.
Well, I have a couple of questions that I think might help.
Sure.
So, what was your starting point with this track? Like, what was the first sound you made or the first note you entered? Where did this begin?
The first thing I made was literally the intro. Like this is the first thing that I made. Like this chord, and then this I guess this little section is the first thing that I made. So yeah, I just basically had like I listened to a couple of like classic house songs, and I was like, this is just one bass line, like one little loop, and it's decidedly like simple, and it goes on through the whole track. And then I wanted to make something like this first, but then it sort of evolved into like angry bass house.
Cool.
That's what it turned into.
Next, he's curious. Like, could you talk a little bit more about the parallel chain, like the one that I think it was Harmer and Citrus?
Yes.
Like, what are the two synth layers doing?
This was in the bass pattern, wasn't it? So there's this sound. If I just entirely like mute the Harmer layer, the Citrus is just the white noise, because Harmer cannot make white noise. It can do like an approximation because it's an additive synth. You know, it cannot make white noise on its own, because white noise is entirely like too complex for something that uses 512 sine waves to make the sounds it makes. So I used Citrus basically as a generator for the noise, and then this is a really, really detuned square-ish waveform.
Okay.
I've detuned this. This detune doesn't mean like detune oscillators against each other. This means how far the harmonics are spread, right? So 2 means like a ratio of 2 means that they are spread exactly so that what once were the even harmonics now hit at odd harmonic spaces. So you get only square harmonics. So you're using the 512 harmonics more effectively because you can now spread basically a whole octave higher in the top end and have a square sound.
Oh.
And then I'm still turning this to the square side of things. Like stock hammer has like like the default patch has a saw here and a square here, and the way they achieve that is via these two graphs. This is timbre 1. This is the harmonic levels. So this has basically all the harmonics that are available. And then timbre 2 has every other harmonic, which is a square. So I am basically turning it to the square side of things from the get-go, and then still muting every other harmonic a bit.
Just to make sure that there's no extra square goodness or extra saw goodness.
No, it's like it's doing that to the square result. So it's every
so it's spreading even
harmonic.
higher.
Yes, that's sort of the harmonic profile, and then there's a bit of detuning here. I don't know what else am I messing with? Yeah, the volume envelope, obviously, like it's got the side chaining built in. I guess a bit. But this shape mostly, like I chose this because of the distortion reacting to what I was putting into it. You know.
Oh, so this came after the distortion was added.
Yeah, I've turned on, like, Hammer has its own distortion. I've turned that to logarithmic, which is basically like going into the wave shaper and doing like a big old curve, like wherever I loaded a wave shaper. There we go. I'm doing a big old curve like this. This is logarithmic. I guess this is the shape that it makes. It's basically brick wall my sound, like.
Oh, so it just instantly slams it.
Instantly slams it, and when that was added, I sort of did the volume envelope because it sort of changed the nature of what was coming out of it.
Oh, for sure.
And, and it still was slammed at 0. By the way, that's another thing. Like, you don't need to worry about, if you're using distortion like this, you don't need to worry about dynamics like this.
What are dynamics even?
Yes, what are dynamics? Like, this is gonna always be pinned to 0 when it comes out. Yes. So, and then effects wise, I've got filtering on the actual tonal sound. So I've got a high pass filter with a bit of resonance that's doing the sweep. I've got a notch filter. I don't know if it does automation. It's linked to an LFO, I think. Let me see. Yes, it's linked to an LFO, but it doesn't do anything when there's no note being played, obviously.
So is there a reason you used slice EQ over the notch filter in the filter snap in? Like, is it because it gives you a bigger range or higher Q value or
slope?
Oh,
24 decibels an octave. The one in the filter plugin is 6 dB or is 12 dB?
It's 12, yeah.
I think 12. I wanted 24 because it's more drastic, and also this is an additive sound. Like, you can be really like aggressive with additive sounds. That's another reason to sort of go additive from the start, I guess. If you if you want, because if you want to like drastically change the sound with filtering, the filtering you do in the synth actually leaves the phase alone. You know, it doesn't mess with the phase, so you have a greater sort of I guess you can mess with it more afterwards without it sounding too fucked up because you sort of shifted something 180 degrees out of phase with itself.
Oh yeah. Well, have you done anything with like other additive synths like Razor, or I know there's one more big additive synth on the market, but I can't quite remember the
think
name of it.
Alchemy has one big additive part. The problem with Alchemy is Apple were dicks and bought Camel
Camel
Audio.
yeah.
Yeah, so there's no way for me to get it now that I can afford it. Back in the day when it was out, like I wasn't making much money, so yeah.
C'est la vie, I guess. Well, I'm curious. Like when you were in this project, like just getting started, like did you have any like problems, like or did it feel pretty comfortable? Like I'm honestly more curious, like how far did you get in the first session of this project?
I guess well I had this little loop going, and then a version of the drop that was way too shitty to even show. But like this has changed a lot since I first like made the drop. Like the sounds themselves changed a lot. The arrangement of where the notes are changed a lot. It used to be like basically this pattern, but with a more distorted synth. Like that's the first thing that I did after making this loop, trying to sort of how can I escalate it, and usually that doesn't work, but I try it anyway because if it does work, it's the best thing to do.
Oh, interesting. Well, why is that?
Because it's like loop based music. Like it's very like this is very loop based, like, and it's supposed to sound like it's loop based, but it's not supposed to get boring. And one way to not make it get boring is like to distort the hell out of it when you're escalating it, I guess.
Totally.
So that is why I wanted this to work. It didn't. It's not like it's not the coolest thing to do in this scenario. And I tend to always like I can I don't know how many times I do this and it doesn't work out, but I still do it every time. Just if I'm starting a track from a point that is not the drop or the chorus, then that is what I try and do. Like use elements from the intro / build to sort of glue it together, you know.
Oh yeah, just to kind of create a cohesive narrative, so to speak. Glorious Rainbow is curious. How did you decide the key? Do you think a lot about what key you're in, or?
This is an E. I decided on E because E is really good to have sub bass in, like F sharp, E flat even.
That's pushing it.
G is cool as well. A flat is pushing it.
Yeah.
And I'd say D is also pushing it already, like as a main key. But it's like really nice. Like it's the range where sub bass is really nicely reproducible by just consumer electronics, just consumer speakers, you know, or even in a club. Like if it's not the best club, they probably have some sort of device sort of limiting how low something can go.
Yeah, and they start to roll off. Like I think a lot of clubs I've seen roll off at like often like 30, 35.
Yeah.
So you'll lose anything that's like lower than D. Like I try not to go below E flat unless I know I'm writing a song that doesn't want heavy sub bass. Like
Yeah.
I tend to stick to that E flat D sharp range up to like I rarely go above G. And I
Mm.
honestly often like if I'm making bass music, I find myself stuck mostly to like uh, D sharp, E, F, F sharp. That's kind of like the four main bass notes that I stay in, just to make sure things are nice and heavy when I'm working with
Yeah.
big fat
You're
sub bass.
also you're also making it easier for yourself and for people playing your tune, because they're gonna have to pitch shift it less because all bass music is in F, as we know.
Oh yeah, I have to pair specs.
Generally, like if they're building a set in E, and your tune is in A, like pitching it down 5 semi is not gonna sound too good. So your tune is probably not gonna end up in that set.
Yeah.
It's sad but true, but that's how it is.
You want to make sure your stuff is. I mean, and that speaks to, I guess, kind of like your intentions at the end of it. Like, a lot of times I see people go into a track without any major focus. And like you were talking about how like you were listening to kind of like probably like electro house, other bass house tunes, trying to like get some ideas, and your idea was I want to make a song like that. You had a specific intention even if you didn't know what like song you were actually going to write. And in the same vein, thinking about like, is this a track that I want to send out to other DJs to be played? Is this a track that I want to get on Spotify playlists? Is this a track that I want to perform live or have played in the background of a Starbucks or something? And being aware of that, not in terms of I'm trying to write a track for that reason, but what is the world that this song is going to exist in can influence the way you approach certain parts of the song. Like, was that a big part here, or did you plan for this to be played out?
Also, like the scenario that I even imagine myself listening to this, like the ideal scenario for this for me would be like on a medium-sized stage on a festival, like in the woods, and like off of my tits on MDMA. That is that is something that I would like.
I'm with that.
Yeah. So this is like a bit for the MDMA crowd because it's really hype.
Oh yeah.
It's really high energy without like doing too much musically.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm kind of curious, like, if there's anyone in chat who might be having trouble starting a song, like using this as kind of like an example. Like, do you have any advice for people who it's like, I just can't come up with an idea, or I can't think about what I want to do because I have too many ideas, or anything that like contributes to like that initial bout of writer's block? Because writer's block can come at any part in a project, and it changes wherever it happens. So like, what would you do, let's say, like if you are just sitting down to kind of make a track like this?
Honestly, what helped me was listening to a lot of music that sort of is in the vein of this. Yeah. Just like click yourself through Spotify, your SoundCloud, like who you follow, and then check out who they follow. That's something that I do very little of, and I used to do more. Uh, I should do this more as well. Just find new influences. Like it's easy to just stumble across something that's insanely good that is like a new thing that you could do with your music. Just steal.
Thank you.
But
Yes. No, keep going. I want to cut you off. Sorry.
Yeah, just fucking steal other people's ideas. Watch Twitch. Watch people make music on Twitch. Like that's something that's fueled a lot of like my last 2 years of making music. Really, it's just being able to see people on Twitch go through the same struggle that I'm going through, and just like come up with a tune like in about 5 hours. Like basically, when it comes down to it, like this whole tune, like the backbone, the skeleton of it was done in basically 5 hours of work. And then the rest of it is like spice and stuff. And that's like where all the hours went into. But like the basic idea, because like at some point I had like a breakthrough session with this song where it just all started to click into place.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where I spent like the most time like writing and arranging what's going to be in the song. And that happened on Twitch as well. And I feel like in that, like from that stream, using my energy, someone could have made another tune, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's something that you shouldn't underestimate, you know? Just being able to share your energy and like benefit from other people's energy around you in the community. I don't know.
No,
This is getting kitschy, dude.
Nah, kitsch is the life, my friend. There's nothing wrong with kitsch or camp or any of that. I live in kitsch. But I mean, with what you're saying, I think it's honestly a really important part of kind of getting into your DAW is actually not looking at your music, not looking at your work, and not thinking about your music, but like trying to figure out what else is out there. Not just in terms of music, but like when I was interviewing Mr. Bill, Bill was talking about how like a lot of his influences come from the things that he experiences, not specifically the music that he's listening to. And obviously the music that he's listening to is influencing him, but like going out to a show, trying new food, having some new experience, and that correlates, like for what you're talking about, with like going into a stream and watching someone else produce, not thinking about like, oh, well, I have this song that I'm stuck with. Maybe this person who's making music successfully can help me with my idea, so let me interrupt them in what they're doing and ask for feedback. Instead, just sitting and watching and getting ideas based on what you're seeing and trying to honestly like imitate that in your DAW, even if you're not making the same style of music.
Yeah, but the technique is like applicable to everything, right? Like
Exactly.
if you're just finding out about stuff, right? You're gonna see someone put a filter on something and it sounds a certain way, and then they put a filter on something in their own DAW and it sounds a certain way. And yeah, that's like a learning experience that's really beneficial because you kind of have to sort of follow up on it yourself, you know.
Oh yeah, and
And
there's
just putting that work into it makes like inspiration happen for me. But also like of course, like Bill said, like just things that you experience. Dude, a breakup is the best song fuel. Like obviously it's tragic and shit, but a breakup is the best song fuel. I've made like oof, after the last one I've made like 3 songs. just but based on that, and like one is just a bitchy sappy love song.
Hey, I mean, if Taylor Swift can make a career out of it, it has to be doing something right.
Indeed.
Well, moving past from that, let's talk a little about like what you mentioned. Like you had like most of the track kind of structured out from what you're saying, kind of from the first session. Even if it wasn't good, it was still kind of a complete idea. So
Yeah.
how did you get to that, to let's say where we're at now? Because what would you say the percentage completion on this? Like if you had to give it a rough estimate, because to me it sounds probably about like 70 to 80%
Yeah, it's
done.
roughly like I'd say it's at the 80% mark. It's just like so I'd say like I need to, where I've got this little marker here, like I need to sort of make this flow a little nicer, stuff like that. Just but that this section is there, that's not going to change. Like the arrangement is sort of set in stone now.
So
Um,
how did you get to this point, like from the first session to now? Because you said there was like a big breakthrough. So maybe talk about that, and then talk about like anything you might have done off stream just to get to where we're at now.
so I sort of sat down with this tune when it was like maybe this long, like 49 bars, um, and sort of stuck working on it like for maybe an hour or two, and then I had to leave, do something else, and then I went back to it after that hour, and then all of a sudden it just clicked that this is a tune, a monkey brain tune. Like it's supposed to be the simplest shit that you could write, you know. And then I just started copying and pasting, and then for once not changing it, you know. This is the same pattern as this. Like this is straight up copy and paste. Like this is only changing the sound in this pattern, you know. There's like one macro automation. That's the only thing that changes. And then there's another snare layer. That's it, and a bit of hi-hats.
But
Like
there's
that's
also
the minimalist progression technique that I just sort of knew that fit in this case, at that moment. And then I started to turn on the stream.
oh yeah, well,
Sort of arrange the whole tune. But like it did change after that. Like the arrangement of it did change after I got I sent this to Volant, and he was like, no, you gotta have a break here. You gotta have more of a break there, and stuff like that. And like it used to just go like this, without this break in between. And now I'm happy that's what it's happening.
oh yeah,
I don't
well,
know.
well,
It's always a good idea to sort of get a second opinion on something, I feel.
oh yeah. I mean, there's always going to be stuff that you can't quite see, and I mean, I feel like referencing is helpful for kind of like putting off like an actual like second opinion a lot of the time, because for a fair number of things that I've found myself struggling with, like when I've wanted to send someone out to someone else, I've started to ask myself, well, what songs already exist? But there is always going to be a point where it's like you need to have another human being to kind of absorb the idea and give their first impressions on it.
Yeah, because like I know reference listening is very important, but this like basically started out with reference listening, and I didn't get any further than I got from that.
Yeah,
know?
totally.
So I needed a human.
Yeah, there's always going to be
human thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, the problem with making music is you get very, very, very isolated. It's a whole lot of time where you're just by yourself in your room working, and that isn't the most creative space to be in sometimes, because we are social creatures. We are inherently pretty much like a pack species. We want to be in groups. We want to be around other people. But with the era of individualism and the idea of the singular artist, it becomes lost. And so, I mean, would you say that you wouldn't have been able to finish this tune if you hadn't sent it to someone?
Phew. It wouldn't have turned out like this. I'll say that. I
Okay.
would have probably been able to, but I wouldn't have had like. I guess I also wouldn't have had the drive to do what I did after I got the feedback, because like obviously reactions to something um like evoke a certain emotion in you as well, like having a crowd of people react to it. So like I sent this on a feedback stream, and people dug it. So I was like, this has merit. um this is another thing, um from how to gauge if an idea is worth pursuing in audio or music production. Just like have it be out there in this in this protected bubble of feedback stream, sort of. Yeah, I guess it is sort of a protected bubble of feedback, but it's still like I don't think people are like overly nice just to be nice on there. Or at least I encourage people to not do that.
Yeah,
Um,
be honest with your feedback, both good and bad. Absolutely.
and I try to lead by example as well.
No, definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I'm noticing, because you mentioned like this is very simple. It's not lazy, it's not boring, but everything that's happening is just kind of adding up together. But you're also, you're saying you're not changing it. It's a complete duplication of a lot of these loops, but there's also a lot of gaps. There's a lot of moments where I can see where you've shortened a clip and where you've used silence as a sound writing or a sound design or even a songwriting tool.
Yeah.
And
Space is very important in this.
exactly. It's a big part of making something that is otherwise repetitive feel less so, because we don't get the satisfaction of the complete idea repeating ad nauseum.
Yeah, and then sort of fills, or to also sort of disrupt that, that loopy feeling.
Yeah, all these little
Like this Tom
incidentals.
stuff, and where's like where's this? What is this? This is verb, like a reverb stuff out again. Like I, don't, I think it's a very very important technique to learn, the sort of reverb stuff out at the end. I feel like you get again free progression through that stuff. And here is something like this is dedicated like transitional sounds. That's a bunch of shit. Um, like this is also something that pops up in these spaces. Like you can see here, I'm automating the volume up and down, and like whenever there's like space in between in my bass phrasing, I sort of uh, automate something like this up. There's an atmosphere here, and it's going away there for that little section, for that little break section, and then it comes back. It's like sort of a drone in the background. Um, just this noise shit. Like this is something that gives your track depth and makes it sound, I don't know, less simple, even if it's basically a really simple concept.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I've used this before. I'm still trying to remember who told me this, but this is like a secondhand quote that I got, allegedly from Noisia. I don't know which one of the trio said this, but it was, it's better to have 11 things at 1 than one thing at 11. And this kind of fits into that. So, because all the individual parts are on their own fairly basic. You have some filter sweeps, you have some volume automation, you have some timbral changes, and I saw Glorious Rainbow had a question in chat about timbre, if you wanted to answer that as well. But like they all work together in exactly the right moments to create something that feels much bigger than essentially the sum of its parts.
Yes, and also like Glorious Rainbow, to address this directly, um, it's timbre is not only like just the color of a sound. In this case, like when you're using additive synthesis to make this happen, it can also like be apparent pitch. If you have like something at a ratio of 7, like really loud, that's gonna sound like that there's a major third on top because that's what it is. So it's also it's the same thing basically. Then like it's the same thing as changing pitch slash tone as well, because that's what you're doing just in the Fourier series.
Yeah, I actually have a video on my YouTube that I'm going to link in chat real quick that kind of connects with what you're talking about. It refers to kind of like building like the notes of a chromatic scale using the harmonic overtone series, which is important for FM synthesis. It's especially important, as you're showing, for additive synthesis. And I think, you know, being aware of the relationships between kind of the physics of the sound and the musicality of those physics, how we interpret them through like the music that we write, where, you know, if you know that, you know, a ratio of 7 in additive synthesis for something like Harmor is going to give you the appearance of a major third, knowing that I think it's the fifth harmonic overtone that is actually like 2 octaves and a major third above your fundamental pitch. And when you're doing FM, if you do FM with the fifth harmonic, you end up getting kind of a major third E sensation. Can allow you, from a sound design perspective, to combine both timbre and the pitch of sound. Like this is especially apparent, I found, on basses, and for music like this, where the bass is like the not just the low end but also the top line. It is the melody. So being able to inject little hints of a melody just by changing the tone can kind of blur those lines.
Exactly. And if you're a brass player, you know what Missar just said. Absolutely, 100%. Because brass players in the 1500s, that was all they had to sort of play melodies. They had the Fourier series because natural trumpet is just a pipe that you blow into.
And it's all a matter of how tight your lips are when you blow.
Yes.
Phrasing.
Phrasing.
Anyways, well, I think from there, like, let's talk a little bit about pardon me, how you would finish this, because like you said, this is about 80% done. So what would your process be for kind of finishing this song in particular? And then I kind of want to move forwards for something like about like how you would go conceptually from a like a seed of an idea into an almost finished track, and then how you would finish the track. But for now, let's just talk about like hypothetically, what would you do to finish this project and get it ready for release from where it's at right now?
What I will do is I'll sort of stack a bunch more stuff in this section, because it feels a tad empty and sort of not like it feels a bit disconnected from what's going on before it. I think the transition into this part kind of works, but going into this break section just sort of takes me out of it as a consumer a bit. So I would probably try and find something that I'll sort of stack into the last 4 or 8 bars of this, and sort of continue it on for maybe 4 bars of this. Stuff just like transition work is very important for this music. Like uh, if you have a dedicated transition section, you need to telegraph it a lot, and that's what I'm not yet doing here enough. I feel so that is the main thing which I would work on. I think the mix itself, like the engineering and stuff, that doesn't need all that much more work. It's basically a mix as I go along. So this is like when I'm pretty much done with the writing, the mix is already also like 60% done. So like I would only need to sort of set up the proper side chaining. Just yeah, but when I mix as I go along, I just do basic side chaining, basic like volume ducking, stuff like that. Uh, Whereas like multi-band side chaining and stuff can be super beneficial in some spots. And I tend to think about that at that stage as well. Like, do I really need everything to duck or this sound, or can I get away with like less of that?
So
Um,
getting like the general idea kind of sussed out, making sure that like everything works together, and then just kind of with both the what it sounds like the songwriting, the arranging, and the mix down is just kind of fixing all those nitty gritty details, which you say for kind of
Yes.
like the end of the track, which makes sense. I mean, I'd say like that's that's honestly the part that I feel most people skip over because it is the most tedious, the most time consuming, and the most subtle in terms of how the track is
like
is finished.
listening to the whole thing, checking like that my perceived energy levels are where I want them, checking that like ambience is added. This hasn't got like my trademark Atmos like for all of the song. I usually have like Atmos everywhere,
Hmm.
100% of the track, just like buried. But they do something. I don't know. Maybe it's just a placebo effect, just homeopathic levels, you know. But it feels like it changes like how I perceive my music. So I tend to do that for every song. Like tend to sit through and just sort out different like ambient samples. Like on the lift off, there's like a mine ambience, like a dark water sound, like completely throughout the entire song, just different parts of it.
Well,
And
I'm sorry. Go
yeah,
ahead. Go ahead.
no, I feel like that's important for like for depth, you know.
Yeah. Well, let's. What I was gonna say was like it really fills in the silence to give it what I call kind of quote unquote natural silence or analog silence, as opposed to digital silence, where if we stop talking and then we both have noise gates on our mic or our microphones, when we stop talking and the noise gates close, no one hears anything. It's all just dead air, and in the sense that like there's nothing showing anyone that like we're even still talking. Like we could be talking during those silences, but it sounds like there's something wrong. It sounds like a mistake essentially, and having atmosphere underneath the track throughout the whole arrangement just fills in any tiny moment of silence with a more analog sensation of silence. Like I was watching a YouTube video a while back with an interview from Kenny Beats, one of the producers from the trap group Loud Pack, who has now gone on to be like one of the biggest names in hip hop and trap like music production. And he talks about how he always puts in just something underneath the track. Like it could be children laughing at a playground, it could be birds, it could be the ocean. Just having something in there creates a vibe, it creates a setting for the world to exist in. And kind of whether it is that stuff, whether it's mine shaft stuff, whether it's even just like a simple synth drone that seems to be pulsing or changing textures, just super quiet almost inaudible underneath the mix. Exactly noise. You go like essentially you're raising the noise floor without slamming the shit out of your track into a mix or into a limiter.
Yeah.
I think that is
Not it being quantization noise. basically.
exactly. So it's something that it's not a placebo. It's just it's the difference between something that feels finished and something that feels complete, which is just a minor semantic thing. But like in this situation, I'm hoping it kind of conveys the meaning that I'm going for.
Yeah. There's definitely a difference in connotation between finished and complete, just because complete implies that you agreed to stop working on it, and I don't know, finished is like like you're finished with your homework.
Yeah, like
You know.
something can be
I'm
done but
finished.
not correct. Exactly.
Done.
I did it.
Yeah, it's not completed. It's just rushed and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what finished implies as opposed to completed.
Complete. Exactly. Well, I think that is it for this project. Unless there's anything else you thought would be really cool to show off, anything interesting that might be fun for the viewers at home.
Yeah, I don't know. Like Subbase obviously is an 808. Yeah, kick drum. I guess have I showed the kick?
Is this sampled
the
or
kick
is this
synthesized? It's from a preset called Bass House 2, and then I sort of tweaked the envelope and sort of tweaked the harmonics of it. But yeah, I tend to do a lot of synth drums and then sort of sample them and put them in my sub sample pack. just so you know where all of this is from. This is probably somewhere it's been in Kick 2 or Phase Plant, or yeah, I just try and sort of make the drums as I go along as well. Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, there's a lot of like. Well, I'm kind of curious about like the top loop. It looks like that's done in like Edison or SliceX.
The top what?
The top loop. The top loop. The thing that you see the ascending MIDI notes. Not that one. Down. There you go.
Top loop. Yeah. Let's see here. Which one is this top loop? Oh yeah, that's from Splice. This is Amsterdam Tech House top loop. Just put in SliceX, and then.
So is there a reason?
What it is?
Is there a reason you do it in SliceX versus having the audio in the track? Is it for like quantizing the loop or something?
First of all, I wanted to be able. I just wanted to be able to mess with the MIDI if it didn't fit.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's much easier in MIDI. I find than just having to move audio, like, because it gets vertical. And MIDI doesn't get quite as vertical because you can just do this, zoom out a little bit vertically.
Definitely.
And yeah, and also like if I chose to do so, I could multi out these, so it's not like I'm losing the benefit of it being like on separate tracks and stuff like that, because I do that sometimes with drum loops as well.
Or like processing the kicks and snares differently.
Yeah, but envelope control and stuff, like all the good shit that a sampler would give you, SliceX has, you know. Like you have dedicated filter and volume envelopes, panning envelopes, speed, like playback speed. So you can make basically extra transients if you want. I want the options of that when I use SliceX.
Yeah, and SliceX is stock,
of
right?
Whether I'm using it or not. Like I just want it to be there if I decide to.
Oh, I dig that. I mean, I've been messing with slicing loops up into like drum racks and samplers, and it's a similar sort of process. So I definitely see that.
Ableton has like a continuous like loop slicer, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different ways you can do it in Ableton. Like you can slice it to like individual samplers on like the drum rack instrument, where like it just contains a bunch of one-shot hits. You can put a loop inside of Simpler, which is the basic sampler in Ableton, and there's in the new version there's a special slicing function which kind of functions like this. And then there's I'm trying to remember. There's a couple of other ways to do it, but I'm kind of blanking right now. But yeah, there's a couple of ways of doing it. But I can see that like you're generally just keeping the loop. It looks like you're adding in a couple of hits on some of these.
There's an extra thing, I guess. What does this sound? It's a hi hat. Yeah, that's a hi hat. I'm sort of doing on like the offbeat 16ths. Doing that thing.
Nice.
That's like, yeah. I feel like that's enough to be a fill in this section. I don't know. Sometimes minimalism dictates that you gotta like do something like this, and that's the drum fill.
Oh yeah. Well, it's like kind of. I guess the thing we can close on is the fact that you don't have any drum builds in this track, which is a very hypey EDM tune. But
Yeah,
the only thing you really have for a drum build is the thing that's kind of right in the middle of our screen. Exactly.
this D.
Just the D.
Yeah,
Just giving up everyone a bit of the D.
that's all. That's this drum loop resampled and I put a high pass filter on it. That's it. That's all that is, and then it as a tom fill. That's all it is. And yeah, I tend to not do the drum builds as well because I find like they're overplayed a bit. I
Exactly.
don't know.
Yeah.
I find also like if you're building something with a traditional drum build, you're also like sort of conveying the idea of this being like conventional, like drop, like conventional EDM drop a bit. I don't know. It feels to me like you when you commit to having that, then you got to commit in the drop as well. And I am just not like I don't want to do that kind of music.
You wanna give yourself more options.
Yeah, I want to do me, not anything like I don't want to do spinning records, for example.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to be on spinning records. A lot of people do, but I don't. I'm I'm probably 10 years older than most of the people on there.
Yeah, I feel
You
you
know?
on that. Well, yeah. Unless there's, like I said, unless there's anything else, I think we can just jump
Yeah.
back to the webcams
All
essentially.
right. I'll press this. There we go.
Perfect. You are big. I am small, and now we wait. No, there we go. Now we're all fixed.
Fixed. All
Okay,
right.
so just to kind of close this off, we talked a little bit about like how someone could get over writer's block when they're starting a project, but to kind of rewind a little bit,
Like that's assuming that you've already sat down and you're like you want to make music like right now and you have like no other options to do anything else,
mhm.
right? You have the time to produce now and then you need to find a quick fix. But there are other options, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, if you want, we can kind of start back at the beginning and just kind of go through the three different stages of production and maybe talk a little bit about like dealing with writer's block in all these different areas. So like,
Yeah.
uh, let's go back then to like if someone is having trouble either getting into the DAW or getting an idea to form in the DAW. Because obviously, like, listening to other tunes, going to other Twitch streamers, kind of seeing what everyone's doing is a really good starting point. But, like, what other ways would you talk about in terms of getting over that initial hump?
So the obvious one for me is when I'm at the like I have an acoustic piano. When I'm at the piano, writing something that is like or just playing, like just jamming again. Like a lot of this comes down to being able to jam, improvise. Um, just jamming out something that I think is memorable enough to be a tune. Then I sort of stick that into my head, and then when I open the door for the next time, I can just recall that. Um, Sometimes I even write it down, pen and paper, on like in musical notation. I feel like such a fucking nerd, but like it's a thing that you can do, and it sort of validates the idea as well, you know. Um, and then so my best ideas I feel I get when I'm out with the dog. Like when I'm just going for a walk with the dog, I just tend to think about things in a way that like in a very very casual way. You know, it's like it's fun times, nothing worky about anything, and I tend to get like really catchy lead lines just playing in my head, and I don't know. I think it's worth sort of experimenting with that. Like, just go out. Even if you don't have a pet, you don't need that as an excuse to go out into the woods and just like explore for a bit. Just be in nature. Change like the surround. Like, you wouldn't believe what kind of a noise floor you're actually experiencing day by day. You know, if you ever put on aviation headphones with like active noise canceling, you realize what the fuck, like how fucking loud it actually is around you. And like that's the thing. Just change your surroundings. Just go outside, do something.
Get out of the house.
Get
Stop
out of the
stop
house.
sitting in your basement. Stop sitting in your bedroom. Stop sitting in your
Stop
apartment.
complaining. Basically, just get off your ass, and do something else, and then think about nothing, or as close to nothing as you can get, and then maybe it'll happen to you.
Well, do
Yeah.
you listen to music while you walk your dog or while you're out of the house?
I do. Sometimes I'll have like a pair of travel worthy headphones with me. Um and sometimes I don't, though. Like, I think the musical ideas that I get, they happen more when I don't listen to music. But when I do listen to music, it's easier to sort of block out, um block out um the things that have been going on all day, I guess.
Totally.
Yeah, but that's the point. Like, maybe that is the point. Maybe don't listen to music while you're doing that. Maybe yeah, because you are supposed to experience a different kind of silence to be able to sort of uh, yeah, formulate ideas on your own, just with the tools you have in your head, I guess.
That's
And if
actually
you constantly just blow other people's creative influences into your head while doing that, I don't know if that isn't a too many cooks situation, you know.
yeah. I mean, that's actually something that I am kind of starting to think about a lot now that you say it. Because generally, like I make sure that I go outside at least once a day. Like pretty much after every stream, I get on my gym shorts, I put on my socks and my shoes, and I just walk. Like I go for a jog and I just like travel until my watch tells me, "Hey, you've burned all the calories you want you to burn for the day," and then I start walking home. And during that, I'm usually listening to one of my playlists on Spotify. A lot of times lately, I've actually been listening to Twitch streams on my phone. And I almost wonder if that is counterproductive in some situations, because I've definitely felt myself kind of, pulled in a lot of different directions. so to speak. And like, I know one of my own big struggle points when it comes to, especially like this part that we're talking about, like the initial seed of getting an idea down and getting something so that it's a finished, if nothing else, like a finished structure, maybe not a finished arrangement, is that like, I want to make music that sounds like this. I want to make music that sounds like that. And I have all of these different thoughts, and it's hard to hone in on the thing that I want to do. It's kind of like option paralysis, so to speak. So it's definitely it's an interesting idea that I'm probably going to try today, where I'm actually not going to bring my headphones with me when I go on my daily jog.
Just like this is such a platitude, but also it's very wise words. Limitation breeds creativity. If you limit your mind to a certain set of just influences and I guess perceptions, you sort of end up being more creative than had you not done that. I find, at least.
Oh, easily. Like, I mean, my best songs, in my opinion, come from me asking a question: what can I do with what I have? For the remix that I put out about 2 weeks ago or so, the majority of the atmosphere and the majority of the percussion in the parts of the song outside of the drop were made by me processing and resampling the vocal that I was given. I've been doing that actually a lot lately, where it's like someone sends me a track or someone sends me vocals, and it's like, well, let me put this through Polyverse Manipulator. Let me put it through a bunch of random presets in Spec Ops by Unfiltered Audio. Let me see what happens when I stretch the whole first word out to be like 5 bars long or 30 bars long rather than the half a bar that it is. And all of these different things push me towards completing the idea, because I just have so many different things I want to try for this vocal, or with this vocal, I should say. And I think by giving yourself that kind of almost arbitrary game or arbitrary rule set, it forces you to be more expressive. Maybe you can speak to this. Like, do you think that going to school helped you with the ability to work in those spaces? Because I know that with school, a lot of my classes, especially my theory classes, were very limiting, because it's like you have to write an invention for 2 parts. It has to be 16 bars long, and you have to have proper Baroque counterpoint. When you're new, it's going to suck. It's going to sound like garbage. But you can still find a lot of challenges with that. Did you find a similar experience, or?
I found that the easier, like the longer you sort of concern yourself with it, the easier it gets to sort of do these little inventions, as you call them. But like the main thing that I was asked to do was like just being able to sort of transcribe by hearing. That's like 3, 4, 5 voice chords and a melody, and just like you get, because you probably don't have perfect pitch. No one has perfect pitch, but the people who have perfect pitch. So you get like one note, and the teacher says like that's an A, and then you get you get to use your relative pitch to sort of figure everything out. But I think through that process, to being able to sort of discern by relative pitch what everything is, that sort of on the one hand ruins listening to music, because you can tell you can kind of tell how simple everything is, but also it makes it a much bigger experience because you can sort of see the backbone of everything. It's like the Matrix almost.
Very much
Like
so, yeah.
yeah, it's eye opening, and I find just writing wise, it helped me because it sort of taught me what to expect and what people would expect and how to subvert that, because that's what it didn't teach me, but that's what I like made up in my head because of that.
Oh no! I mean, well, what you said, like I got excited because I mean that's the thing. Like, it's this game that I think, especially once you get more developed in your theory, starts to kind of subsume everything else. It's like, you know, if you know no music theory, you have this mindset of if it sounds good, it is good. If you have a little bit of music theory knowledge, you're like, oh, I gotta make sure that I'm using like a proper dominant seventh chord so that my song has all the right tension and release. And then like once you have a shit ton of music theory knowledge, you're like, if it sounds good, it's fucking good. We just have a whole bunch of words that we can use to justify to other people, well, this is why it sounds good. And it's like, you know, you got to learn the rules to break them, or at least you got to learn the rules to know how many ways you can break them.
Indeed, yes. You gotta know, like you gotta know what as I said earlier, as what the expectations are in order to subvert them, and then you gotta like you find almost infinite ways that you can do that, but only like 3 sound good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like it all depends on, you know, the project that you're in. Like context is everything, which I think can be a good way to kind of springboard off into kind of like the second part of this. Like once you have the initial idea actually done, like what if you don't know where to go from there? Like how would you iterate upon like an initial song idea and turn that into a mostly finished track?
One thing that is immensely helpful that I sort of learned at uni, but also like knew about before, is reharmonization. If you find that you have like a really nice chord progression, a really nice top line on it, and it could be the song, and you don't know how to make different parts, try reharmonizing. So by reharmonizing, what I'm saying is you want to find substitutes for the chords that you're using, and there are quite a number of substitutes for every possible chord, and some of them make sense, some of them make less sense in certain situations, but there is certainly 100% a way that you can reharmonize any entire chord progression and fulfill the same function, but having entirely different chords. 100%.
I mean, even as simple as like using inversions or like a different bass note. Like I've been playing a lot with slash chords. I've also been playing quite a bit with like polychords. Like I'd say a lot of my harmony comes from kind of a very simplified version of polychords where I like to play two-handed chord progressions, and generally what I'm doing is I'm playing through 2 different progressions in the same key with my 2 different hands, and it just leads to very rich and colorful harmony while not ever really feeling super dissonant, unless it's like I'm playing like a flat 9 chord, or unless I hit like an awkward tritone. But like the way that I have started thinking about things, like being able to branch off into like different combinations, like maybe the right hand chord progression stays the same, but maybe the left hand chord progression changes and maybe gets further away from the initial chord progression. And you know, it's a fun process. A lot of my harmony is influenced by whatever Adam Neely uploaded. Honestly, same. I will say, going on YouTube and looking up one of those music theory people, like, I will say, like, about a year and a half ago, like, most of my chord progressions, most of my melodies were straight up stolen from 8-bit theory on YouTube.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like that's also like a good place to steal because they sort of lay it out in the open for you to steal.
Oh yeah. Like, do you have any
Yeah.
particular YouTubers or even
Oh,
Twitch
dude,
streamers?
just fucking like I look at Wolfpack videos and I'm like, they film themselves playing the things on the piano, right, or on the bass, and I just look at the fingers and I'm like, okay, that's mine.
Hey.
Then I just try to sort of obscure it, but yeah, or haywire as well. Like just like everyone who sort of films themselves playing the thing, it's mine. This is mine now. I made this.
Oh yeah, I mean, steal like an artist.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's fun. Well, I mean, what if because I know some people like going into the theory of things can be a bit daunting. So like, what
Yes.
if and also some genres might not function that way. Like, let's say, I mean, no disrespect to anyone involved, obviously, but let's say we're making a rhythm tune. Or we're making some bro step, or we're making some neurofunk, something that might not necessarily be as harmonically based, something that might not be able to benefit from a shift in the key or the tonal center. Like, what are some other ways of iterating, something more sound design focused into a finished track, or at least into like a finished idea?
So what I end up doing a lot in like heavier bass music that's like designed to be in Phrygian key or no key, uh, like in Phrygian mode or not at all, is like I end up just cloning patches and sort of introducing a drastic change, but that's like static. It's not like not like automated in to go somewhere. Just it's a separate patch, and then I throw that into the phrase that I have um at a point where it makes sense. Um and or I do it with automation. Like I change the timbre of the patch in a way that it first of all fulfills like the role of a new sound, but it also has like enough qualities of the preceding sound that it doesn't feel like it's a new track all of a sudden. Um, that's like that's again like a fine line, because
Yep.
if you change it too much, then it's gonna sound like shit because it's not like it's timbrally not what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, well, that's the difference between something like you just kind of said. It's a very fine line between something being cohesive and something being repetitive.
Yeah,
So
indeed.
I get
Indeed.
that. Well, I mean, what about the final stages? Because for a lot of people, I feel like they skimp on the fine details, and my impression, and I could be wrong about this. I don't know if maybe you've felt this as well, where you see people who maybe for whatever reason, like, they are concerned about the amount of work that would go into fixing all of the things that take something from a good song to a great song, or they're just not aware of like all of these subtle details that go into other tracks that they're not putting into their song. Like, what would you say to someone who is, let's say, like, they sent you a track and it's sounding close to where your song that we listened to, the work in progress, is at, and they're like, this is already out on SoundCloud, it's already something that I've posted publicly, and they think they're posting it for clout, but you can see like this isn't quite where it should have been.
Well, the first thing I would say is, dude, same. Because like I've done this. I've made this mistake, and it's just a thing that you sort of you don't know that it's necessary until someone actually points out that it's necessary to you, and before that I like before someone told me that my track like lacks depth and sort of attention to detail. I didn't really focus on like things like how deep is the sidechain at this point. How can I maybe automate it to like make it less deep in the build where it's probably disrupting the dynamics of everything and sounds like ass. It's just um yeah. And that's like a thing. Like a lot of people I think don't do as much like automation and just like the final little building blocks that sort of make a track sound like a work of art rather than a bunch of patterns that you've come up with that sound really cool like by themselves. um Again, we come back to fucking Wagner, fucking terminology, fucking Gesamtkunstwerk. That's something that you that
Could you
that you
translate that
want
into
to make.
English?
That is something that you want to make, and I assume at least that's the idea.
Mhm.
Have the whole piece belong within itself, rather than it being a collection of ideas that sort of you hastily glued together with a vengeance riser.
Yeah,
Um,
stacking loops is very different from writing a song, and
yeah,
it can be
it's
really
the difference
easy to
between
mix that.
cooking and making noodles.
That's actually a good one. I'm gonna steal that. That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Well, it's like I've always found myself, asking what is it that maybe this person isn't hearing or isn't seeing,
Mm.
because I don't. Maybe this is just my nature, but I don't want to believe that people are like intentionally putting this stuff off. I think it's more likely that people just don't notice it, because when
Mm.
you're listening to a finished track, you don't notice that stuff. It's all these tiny little details that just take a track from working well to feeling like cohesive, to feeling engaging, and to feeling natural. Like it was supposed to do that from the start.
Yeah. One thing that I feel like a lot of people, again, I come back to what I said earlier with about the putting something on ice, like just losing your emotional attachment to everything in the song makes you like it gives you the ability to make rational decisions and listen to with like an unbiased ear, or at least a more unbiased ear than if you had just done the same listening right after you were done writing, you know. um and it lets you make calls like I want I want there to be ambience. I want there to be another breakdown, so sending your stuff to other people, and very important, just gain distance to your work, enough distance so you can uh first of all apply new ideas and even have new ideas, I guess. Yeah. That's actually a good thing to say, because um with this track, like I wouldn't be showing this off if I hadn't like let it sit for a while, right? This
Totally,
this
yeah.
whip that we looked at, like I've let this sit for, I don't know, a month or something. After like this is a month old project, and like I've just now been able to sort of make the call that this needs like this stuff needs to happen to it,
Hmm.
and if you if you can't allow yourself to do that, if you need to release immediately, I feel like um you're robbing yourself of the opportunity to sort of give it that that fine polish, like that last little bit that it needs, you know.
Absolutely. Well, it's a lot of people are, um, not to throw shade on anyone, obviously, but I noticed there's a lot of people who are focused on getting recognition, and they make music because they love it, and they make the music available because they want other people to notice them loving it. Also, real quick pause. I need to thank I think the ones that I missed: Recording Monster Studio a while back, News Pop an hour ago, Roll the Red 14 minutes ago, Sound in the City. Thank you all so much for following. Sorry, we're kind of getting deep into the weeds here. I just wanted to kind of address all of those people. But got to do the Twitch duty. But what I find is when you get over the idea of I am making music and I want other people to look at the music that I make, and rather look at it as I just want to make music. If other people like it, that's cool, but I'm not going to show it to someone unless I think it's worth showing, and unless I feel like this is something that I need help with. Because it completely changes your mindset.
And I guess in response to Glorious Rainbow here as well, how to not go, I hated presses delete after hours of work. Principle. You need to be principled. You need to, first of all, like I have the principle, I never throw something away. Even if it's the shittest idea and I hate its fucking guts, I don't throw it out. I keep it around, and then if it's even to remind myself of what not to do, I keep it around. You know, so everything that you produce has a value, even if it's a negative value, I guess.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I'm gonna try and show something really quickly on stream, but just to kind of connect with this, like if you look on stream right now, you'll see this folder that I've just opened up. All of these ideas right here are the songs that I'm never finishing. I have this labeled meh ideas because they're not songs that I'm going to open with the intention of finishing. They're songs I'm going to open to remind myself, hey, I can make really shitty ideas, and then I can turn some of those into really good ideas, and maybe some of these can eventually become good ideas. And I even segment off things like good ideas. These are even more projects that I think I might one day finish, but none of it goes away. Like I always have, my projects available so that I know what it is that I have done, and I don't allow myself to get too, kind of like you were mentioning, too emotionally invested. And I kind of wanted to touch on something that you kind of alluded to when it came to kind of being detached from your work on an emotional level, is this idea that I learned in some of my broadcasting classes, is this idea of, killing your babies, where, you love this music you wrote. You're really attached to it. You're the reason why all of these notes, all of these sounds are arranged in the order they are. So it's really, really tough to let go of any or all of the ideas, kind of going in the opposite direction of I hate this and I'm just going to delete it. It's the how do I refine that and being more kind of like that classic German dispassion. The German emotionless response is a big part of it. I feel like. What do you think?
Yeah, I feel like that is accurate. You have to be German about this. Like you have to sort of
keep going, buddy. I'm with it.
Disconnect. You have to disconnect like your ability to learn from like how much you dug making the song, and that includes like distancing like your experience listening back to it with it as well. Like if you hate it, obviously you don't like listening to it, but you must have like enjoyed making it somehow. Yeah. Otherwise you wouldn't have done it this way. And then it's time to sort of like it serves as an example of um this energy that I have. How can I channel it to make something that is actually worth listening to? Or how can I actually use this idea in a context where it makes more sense than it does? Maybe you have like a top line and you've chosen the wrong chords for it, or you have like it's super loopy and you have like no inspiration with it just blaring into your ears all the time. Um, then yeah, just axe the project, put it on ice, but keep it around so you can look at this, but maybe just extract the core essence of it and put it into another project, you know?
Oh yeah. I mean,
That's something I've
zombifying.
certainly done.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
well, zombifying your projects or Frankensteining your projects together is I think a tried and true method. Like I know Bill has some projects that he calls like composites. Like on his most recent album, there was like a bunch of different tracks that were composites of 2 or 3 other projects put together, and like the majority of the sounds in like the sample pack that I've been putting together that I'm gonna release for free at the end of the year is like almost 95% older projects that I'm like, I have no idea what to do with this. I don't know what I want to do to evolve this. So let me, kind of put the lid on it, not delete it, but instead find all of the worthwhile parts, export them as audio files or as Ableton clips, and then use those in my other productions in the future, because maybe there's a melody loop that I really liked. Maybe there's a riser that I made that I thought was really cool. Maybe the drums are actually really nice and punchy, but the actual arrangement of the drums is garbage. Having that in my collection allows me to still extract some value out of this thing that was kind of a failed endeavor.
Yeah. Yeah. Like Bill has obviously like if we're talking about Bill has like a really really cool way of recontextualizing like failed attempts at anything. He'll just put it in a granulator or something and just play around with that, and then it's already served a purpose beyond what it was originally designed for, and that is value in itself. You don't need to like have it be a song. Even you can just use it as a sound source to manipulate.
Oh yeah.
And yeah.
I mean, it's nice. I mean, I have honestly really found like just so many cool ideas started by just kind of saying fuck it, let's see where we can take like this old idea. I remember I'm trying to remember. I don't remember the name of the project, but like I moved all of the drum sounds into like my synthesizers, and I tried to like make my leads and my basses from my drums, and I'll be honest, ended up sounding kind of like garbage, but it gave me a lot of really cool ideas, and it actually taught me a lot. Like I've been messing around with like basically making my own wavetables by looking for single wave cycles in some more complex sound, putting that into a sampler, and designing a sound from that. So it's always a matter of recycling an idea or repurposing an idea, or even just kind of going back to what we talked about near the start, just stealing something from someone else. Like I've stolen countless ideas from other producers just from hearing them mention it and being like, well, how do I do that? And then I do that, and then it ends up being a whole project.
Yes. Yes. Right. And also, like, going back to the limitations breed creativity thing, which is I think a concept that that you understand very well. The thing, like I recently, well, I say recently, it's like a year ago or something, and a developer from ImageLine actually like played around with his modular synthesizer, sent me a recording of it on stream, and I decided to make a whole tune out of that recording, like just the drums, the synths, everything was just 100% using that recording as a generator. And I feel like that gave me some valuable insights into just sound design, technique, drum synthing, because when your source is limited, then you got to make do with effects. Basically, you can't really do anything but process it to make it sound different, you know. Or also arrangement. Like I tried to sort of it was this synth line that had like a bit of a, I guess, quarter tone, like 250 cents pitch bend in it.
Oh no.
And I tried to sort of incorporate that into the writing as well, because I wanted to sort of mimic the feel of it, but have it like be a song concept. This song I put on ice, like 100%. It's I'm never gonna finish that, but it turned out to be like a really big thing, and it actually sounds kind of cool when you listen to it for the first time. But like it lacks like the fine, yeah, again, the fine polish at the end. That's what this is lacking, and I have yet to grow enough as a producer that I can sort of finish that with the limitations in place, you know.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like here's kind of the classic one. Have you ever tried making a song out of a kick drum?
Yes.
I feel like everyone's gotten, hopefully everyone's gotten through that at some point in their musical journey. And if you're listening and you have not tried to make a song out of a kick drum, I want you to not stop watching, but as soon as we're done, I want you to turn off Twitch and I want you to go make a song out of a kick drum.
Yes. Absolutely.
But I guess
it is something, it's an experience that all of us should try
at least once. I guess now's a good way or a good time to start shifting into kind of the final little bit. We've been going for we just hit 3 hours actually. If I double check,
I haven't looked at the time.
Yeah, 3 hours 57 seconds. We just passed the 3 hour threshold. So
sweet.
Just means we've been having fun. I feel like, but let's finish up with I guess just any extra little tips or techniques or any words of advice that you want to share with people, or do you want to just get right into the fun stuff?
Buy Kiloheart stuff.
Yes, buy Kiloheart's products. You will not be upset with your purchase, and they also have a monthly subscription.
Sponsored, right? Just buy the shit.
Yeah, like it is. I mean, technically we're sponsored because we've gotten some free stuff, but we're not like paid sponsors.
We're not like every time we say Kilohertz we get $5. It's not like that.
But what we do know is just like how good those plugins are.
Yeah, like they've made like my life so much easier. Because it's basically a set of simple tools, but they are designed in such a utilitarian way that you can just, I don't know, you know where everything is. It's all in the same spot. It's all in this ecosystem that works. That's fucking Apple terms, but it kind of works, you know. No. It kind of works. This little sort of microcosm of Kilohertz with like the snap-in hosts and stuff like that. It just enables you to be a lot more and a lot more specific in what kind of signal processor you want in the space of one rack in your VST, like in your VST rack, like in the space of one rack unit in there. So yeah, I heartily recommend that.
Absolutely.
And I guess also like do learn a bit about music theory. Like, don't learn as much as I have. Maybe. I feel like I feel like at some point it got quite tedious for me because like the course I had at uni, I knew the shit that they were teaching me already, and it was basically I was sitting there to sort of get like full score at the end, but I still had to sit there. I could have just not gone to the class and still written the test, and then yeah.
Yeah,
So,
you don't. Well, you don't have to get all the way to 12-tone serialism. That's for sure.
yeah,
Unless you want
you
to.
don't unless you're into that, obviously. But what the fuck?
Hey. Sometimes we want crunchy. We want crunchy boys. Okay.
You want crunchy boys?
Arnold
Yeah,
Schoenberg is
right.
my Zadie.
I mean, there's certainly a point to be made. Like there are actually some dodecaphonics compositions that do give off like a nice vibe, but Wojciech isn't one of them.
Fair enough. All right.
Oh man!
Let's move over to the fun stuff. How's that sound?
All right.
So
fun stuff.
the fun
Yes.
stuff, starting off with Doll Wars. Let's talk about like other DAWs. Like, what do you think about DAWs besides FL Studio? I know you also use Reason. Do you use Cubase?
I use Cubase.
Yeah.
I do use Cubase and Studio One. Those are the ones that I have on my main DAW PC. I have like 50 versions of Ableton Lite. I had never like all like the you get like it feels like you get 10 of them with every hardware piece you buy.
Yep.
So I've had some insight into Ableton, I guess, but like not the full view. Like I've never had access to all the features and stuff. But just from the groundwork up, like Ableton is like, I feel like Ableton is pretty much the opposite of how I want to work. I don't know.
No, very much. I mean, your whole thing is about options. You want to have a lot of options.
Yeah.
And FL Studio is like the prime DAW if you want to have every single option, even ones you might not want.
Exactly. Even if I don't use the option, if the option is not there, then I'm mad.
Yeah. Whereas I'm very much a more straightforward kind of linear. Like,
Yeah.
I don't mind having a lot of options, but I work best when like I find a thing that just it does the tool. That's the thing. That's the reason why I like Kilohertz is because they have that Swedish minimalism down to a T, and Ableton is in its own way very minimalistic.
Yeah.
There's no hidden windows. There's no kind of multi-layered hotkey setups. Like it's just you want to do something, you grab the thing and you do it. And there's no time in between A and B. But that's different strokes for different folks. That's kind of why this is the fun part. So if you want to shit on other DAWs, you can go right ahead and say, I think Ableton's awful. Because let's face it, I think FL is fucking bloated garbage.
I could still make music in it. It's just like I think it's not worth the money that they're asking for it. But like I wouldn't buy Ableton because of the inflated price. I feel
Totally.
because like if you look at, for example, Cubase, which is in my opinion a much more feature like it has much more features than Ableton, and it costs half of Ableton. So that's something that you gotta just yeah.
But you gotta buy one of these suckers. That's the thing.
Yeah, you gotta
buy one of these
license
motherfuckers.
Shit, that is infuriating, obviously.
So
But-
Cubase and Pro Tools, y'all. Well, actually, Pro Tools. I will give Pro Tools this. They finally moved to an iLok Cloud licensing setup.
Oh,
So
well,
I no longer need an iLok.
it's it's only been 25 years.
Exactly.
God damn. Yeah, but I mean that's like you can license Cubase to your machine. By the way, I just chose not to do that because if you have the dongle and the dongle goes bad, you can still like have it replaced. But if your machine goes bad, you're
Oh,
fucked.
then you're
You
yeah.
can, like you
I've lost a
can't.
couple of licenses to hard drive failures.
Yeah, and that's what I don't want with the $500 thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, why don't we take a moment to comment on the Logic users in chat?
Oh yes. I've used a bit of Logic actually. I've never had a Mac computer, but I've used Logic a couple times, and I I found it infuriating to work with. I don't know if it's just because the guy whose MacBook I was using had no mouse, but that was probably a part of it. But I feel like in Logic, everything is so the design is just so repulsive to me.
I mean, yeah.
Mm.
When I want to feel like I'm working with a toy, I open up Logic.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, look, I like Logic. Don't get me wrong. I use Logic. You know, when it comes to scoring a picture, it's honestly easier for me to work in Logic than it is for me to work in Ableton most of the times. But like, if I didn't have to use Logic for any project, I would probably uninstall it. Though I will say, I will give it this: the stock mixing plugins, pretty nice, pretty
Yeah, the
good.
stock plugins are actually pretty good in Logic, but but that's no excuse for like prioritizing green, like poison green, as like the main color. That's just I don't know. Like I have a red green weakness, and it just fucks with my head just looking at that. Like ugh.
Yeah, it's just
I don't know.
I mean, it's just for me, it's very uninspiring. Like it's just and at least with Ableton, like I won't say that Ableton is the most inspiring DAW to work in, but it's for me, it's just so fast, especially when you're working in audio. Like I can finish a track in like 2 hours if I'm working like only in audio. Like it's honestly kind of surprising sometimes just how quickly ideas develop and even change just from playing with like different warp modes and like just real simple like one lane automation changes. And in FL Studio and in Logic, oh god, it's just I'm sorry, buddy, I can't do it. I don't know how you work with audio in Logic or at FL Studio, whatever DAW you're using. I can't.
Well, I don't. That's the thing, though. Like I've never like worked with audio too much. Like I do a fair bit, but like only when it's absolutely necessary. But most of my stuff is actually kept in MIDI because of FL Studio and the way it works. And I find that I can like crank out a tune, like a fully, basically a playable tune in like 5 hours as well. Like if I'm really inspired, right? If the creative juice is not the problem, I'm done in 5 hours, and it's like it's a full song. It's got a chorus, it's got an intro, it's got a build up, it's got everything. And yeah, I feel like speed is only like limited by how well you know the door.
Oh,
I guess.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean,
So if I like, I've tried to make stuff with Ableton. Took me fucking half an hour to get like a loop that sounded okay in it, because I had to fuck about with the MIDI routing so much that yeah, I don't know.
well, it's like the
It
way.
just feels yeah, it's a thing that you have to learn once, but still, it took me quite a while.
No, definitely, definitely. Like there's a lot of things for every DAW. I think that's kind of the fun part of this is like you have people like Sachi in chat who is very adamant about the superiority of Logic over FL Studio. And I mean,
Quality of the FL engine. Okay, shut the fuck up, dude. You're wrong. because that's bullshit. Like
Yeah,
you
I
can do a
mean,
null test of a note in Serum, and it's like basically the same thing. FL Studio will render the same thing as Pro Tools or Ableton. So you're full of shit. Sorry.
yeah, and in 20 and like in as of like I'd say like 2016, 2017, there's like practically zero difference. If you're doing like you were saying, like if you test a Serum saw wave in Ableton, Logic, Pro Tools, FL Studio, and like Cubase, like they're all gonna be like essentially identical.
Yes.
And I don't really think that, like, especially here's the thing, Sachi, like, who do you think is listening to your music that's going to be able to tell the difference? Like, is the audio engine separation actually relevant when you're talking about people who are listening to shit on Spotify on their fucking Apple earbuds? Just, I don't know, just something to consider. I'm not saying skip corners on your music, but I feel like that's a bit of a silly thing. I think it's more like the reason why I like talking about this is like everything has its own like special like quirk, and whatever DAW works best for you is going to be the one that you'll make the best music in, regardless of what the actual technical specifications are between them. Like, I mean, I love doing a lot of weird shit with Max for Live, and no other DAW has Max for Live right now. So, like, I think that is a big, like a big factor for me. And I'm sure, like, working inside of Patcher, working with a lot of things like Harmor, like additive synthesis, working with like the automation clips, like is a huge part of how you work on your music.
Dude, fucking slide notes. Absolute number one argument to use FL Studio. Slide notes. No other DAW has slide notes, and it makes it so much less painful to do pitch bend because you can tell where it stops, like in MIDI.
Anyways.
No. Keep it going, dude. Holy shit. This is going to be fun. Oh, man.
Oh, no. I mean, I try to keep this a chill environment, but hey, Sachi, if you want to express yourself in that way.
Go, dude, fucking hit me up on Discord. Holy shit, dude.
Oh goodness. I mean, like, hey, they're all music making programs at the end of the day. That's all I'm saying.
But like, I have science on my side, is what I'm saying to that.
What's your Discord? Well, I mean, if you want to plug your Discord for everyone, you can, because I think just in the interest of making the VOD on YouTube less dramatic.
Yeah,
I think
just keep that insulting shit. Like, keep that to my Discord. I can deal with it.
Yeah. Well, I guess what we can do is move towards the final two bits, which is viewer questions and just a little bit of a talk about what's coming up in the future. So if anyone has any questions for Shroom that we didn't get to answer while we were going through everything, now is the best time to put that in chat. And Sachi, if your questions are going to be insightful, I might have to time you out, so please tread with caution, because Shroom doesn't have any problem dealing with your stuff, but I have an educational community to foster, and people being dicks are not the place to, are not the ways to get there. But while people were typing their questions in chat, let me ask you. We know what's happening in the next couple of months. We know what's happening going on in the near future. What's down the road for Shroom? What are your plans? What are your dreams? What are your desires? Who are you, Shroom? No.
Fucking hell. So I'm gonna keep doing the sound design. Like I want to actually. So my dreams obviously are long time like a long time employment in the music sector. Something that's like a stable leg to stand on rather than freelancing, because I've been freelancing for years, and it's sort of it helps me keep my head above the water, but just slightly. That's the thing. Yeah, yeah. I want stable employment. That's my main goal. And when I have that, I figure out like the rest. You know. So I've seen an opening, for example, at Sennheiser, and they're in Germany, so I could like stay in the country and do do research on headphones and shit like that. Just like put my audio engineer degree to use. Um, Stuff like that. I could also work at the radio or something like that. Just and just keep making tunes while I'm doing it, I guess.
I'm with it. Do you have any plans for more releases throughout this year?
Yeah, I'm just like as we sort of brushed over earlier, I've got like a bunch of tunes that I'm sitting on. Like this is like what we listened to earlier is one of them that I want to get ready to sort of curate first of all, like which ones are going to be on it and which ones aren't. But the one we listen to is probably definitely gonna be on it because it's pretty hype, and it's gonna be more of a I guess main stage EDM-y kind of deal that's gonna fit like into existing structures,
Well,
not like Fabric, which is basically a passion project, retro-ish stuff, I guess.
yeah. Well, when are we getting that Sage remix?
When are we getting that Sage remix?
Yeah,
Yes.
because I've been hearing lots about it. I've only heard little bits of it.
Put that like I want to put that out on its own, I guess, because it's a remix. So I'm using like it's a derivative work. So that is obviously not like I'm not going to put that in a compilation of my stuff.
Absolutely.
You know. So yeah, I wanna find first of all I want to find like a good date to do it. And I wanna have a bit of a closer look at the master of that. Maybe have it sent in to someone else to master, even because like I am pretty good at this, but it's always better to send your stuff out to master from someone else.
Oh no, yeah, getting your ears off of the idea can definitely help.
Yeah, and just sit in with the mastering engineer, like listen to it with them, and just have it like have the benefit of like mastering hardware, which I don't have. You know, it's pretty like the writing is done, the mix done is basically done. It's about the master time now. Like
Definitely.
that's the thing that I gotta take care of.
Definitely. Well, I saw Noise Signal had a question.
Oh, yeah.
Do you ever do like sync music, like music that's synced to like picture or video games or anything like that?
I have done a bunch of orchestral pieces in 2014, 2015, and I've sort of based them off of visual art, and it's a fun thing to do, but if I were to ever do it again, it would be more industry focused. Like I would probably do it along gameplay and stuff like that, like for indie games or something like that. If I wanted to get like into film scoring game scoring, which is a thing I could technically get into, but it's a very limited palette of things that you can do. It's been expanded a bit by the Doom 2016 game. Fucking thank you, Mick. Thank you. But
shout out.
Yeah, but it's still like a sort of a very very constrained field, you know.
Yeah. Where is the mic effects at? Where's the pitch up and down?
Hold on. Are you asking for the reverb? Because
oh my goodness. Yes, turn into Shroom streams if you want some wacky hijinks like a big old reverb, auto tune, and affecting the master pitch of everything, including his own voice.
Yes. I will do that to sort of take my mind off. That's another thing that people think I'm just doing that for the memes. That's not actually something I do for the memes mainly. I'm doing this to sort of clear my head. Like, oh, like it's a quick fix, I guess.
I would like get you out of the tonal
Yeah.
context.
Just
That's
yeah,
smart.
just fuck with everything for a bit and then turn it back to normal, and then yeah, while and then you still have like sound going on, but it's pretty much picture unrelated. Yeah.
I dig it. No, that's actually I'm gonna start doing that. I'm gonna put some little altar boy on my master and start fucking with the pitch value.
Yeah. Just to throw yourself off.
Exactly. Well, I think that about does it. Unless anyone else has any other questions.
Do I see anything else? No. I don't see anything else.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, thank you so much for doing this, Shroom. I really appreciate it. Glad to have you on. I feel like this was a real eye-opening experience. It's good to be able to talk about stuff like with someone who understands a lot of like the linguistical things that come in with learning, honestly, a little bit too much about music or audio, and kind of things that sometimes they sound simple when we say them, but they're unfortunately not that simple, and it takes a lot of stuff to kind of break down. But hopefully it wasn't too over people's heads. I feel like people got into what we were talking about, and don't be afraid to Google, by the way, y'all, if you have any questions. So why don't you give everyone your plugs, and then we can get out of here.
Yeah, I don't really do modern social media, really.
Find him on Jib Jab.
You can find me. You can find me on SoundCloud. You can find me on Twitter. It's like Shroomhead_1. That's the alias. That's the handle that I use basically everywhere, on Twitch as well. But yeah, that's really it. I do have a Facebook page, but Facebook is dead. Yeah, that's really all my things that I could plug. Yeah, and listen to Fabric. It's on my SoundCloud. It's pretty good. I say that it's pretty good. I don't know.
Yeah, it's some good music. You still use your YouTube?
Yeah, my YouTube. I do still use my YouTube, but most of the stuff that I've recently uploaded is private, because it features things that you might not want to see. Yes. Yeah, the thing with my YouTube is I don't like upload regularly to this, because there's a history with my YouTube channel. I don't know if you've seen it. There are a bunch of videos. I tend to sort of brush over that, but there's actually 4,500 subs on my YouTube channel, because I used to do YouTube poops. Like I used to fuck with other people's videos and sort of put that on my channel.
Oh, I see. I'm scrolling down here to the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That's like there's a bunch of them. There's like over 100. And
hold on, let me show this off real quick. Look at all of this. Man, hold on. All right, let's see. Let's find a good one.
There's a lot of shit.
Can we pee in your nest now? You pee.
Oh, glorious. Absolutely amazing and glorious and perfect. And what a way to end the stream.
Indeed. I was basically for a very long time I was a shit poster on YouTube, and that's sort of a reputation that sticks to this alias as well, I guess.
Hey, memes are the new advertising.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it. You have a good one. You get some food, get some sleep. Absolutely. I had a blast. Video will be up this weekend on YouTube. I guess
Hey, let's go raid the Whittler.
yeah,
The Whittler.
we'll do that. All right. Well, I'm gonna end the call. So, goodbye. Bye. Alrighty. Thank you for that. Thank you, everyone.